Chapter 1, Reincarnation, 1, Woo, Woo, Woo Wah. 1. The endless crying was not helping with her head-splitting pain. So much pain, Len Ruoxue felt as though she had just been run over by a car. 2. So noisy. Still half-conscious, Len Ruoxue groaned in annoyance. Miss, you're finally awake. Woo, Woo, you are just too noisy. I don't even want to wake up, Len Ruoxue complained in her head. Enduring the discomfort, she reluctantly opened her eyes. In front of her was an unfamiliar girl wearing an emerald green muslin outfit. The girl had an innocent-looking face, and if not for the 2 streams of tears falling down her cheeks and her pair of red, swollen eyes, she would be very adorable. Where is this? Shouldn't I have died from the plane crash? 3. Len Ruoxue's dear cousin Ling Qier would definitely tell everyone that she died in a plane accident. And her dear grandfather would, of course, just let it be because he would have lost his most useful pawn and couldn't do much about it anymore. Since childhood, Ling Qier could not beat her in anything, so she was very jealous. She had always felt that Len Ruoxue had stolen her inheritance and her beloved man. So this time, she bribed the pilot to plant a bomb on the plane. 11. Who are you? Where is this place? Len Ruoxue asked weakly. Miss. You're my young miss. I'm your maidservant, Cui Zhu. Miss. Don't you recognize Cui Zhu anymore? Woo. It's all my fault. I didn't protect Miss from all the bad people. Cui Zhu's excitement from seeing Len Ruoxue wake up was immediately overrun by a new wave of despair when she realized that her young miss could no longer recognize her. Wait, stop crying. Where is this place? Len Ruoxue was feeling a bit annoyed by all the crying. Oh miss, this your home. This is the general's mansion. Cui Zhu answered while still sobbing. She was just too concerned. Why was her young miss so mad about her crying? My home. Len Ruoxue tilted her head and looked around the well-furnished room. All the furniture was made from wood, and many of them even looked like precious historical artifacts. And the maidservant's dress seemed to be from ancient times. But wasn't she supposed to be dead? Cui Zhu, I think I've lost my memory. Len Ruoxue sighed helplessly. Before she could understand what was happening, she would just pretend that she had lost her memory. Oh, my poor young miss. Cui Zhu, what is this city called? And what's my name? You are Len Ruoxue, Mississippi. You are the granddaughter of the leading general of the Eastern Lagoon Empire. We are in Phoenix City, the capital of the empire. Miss, you were in a coma for 3 days. And you don't even remember me now. So, this young miss is also named Len Ruoxue? And she also fell into a coma. What a coincidence. Len Ruoxue had even more questions, but she kept her composure. I fell into a coma. What happened? No wonder she felt as if her head was going to split open at any moment. It's the notorious 7th Prince and Su Nair, that filthy woman. They hurt you, and Cui Zhu couldn't even protect you. Cui Zhu was wallowing in self-blame, and tears were welling up in her eyes again. 1. Miss woke up. Just as Len Ruoxue wanted to continue digging out more information from the innocent Cui Zhu, a tall young lady in black walked in. Her pretty face was also full of concern, but she was much older and very composed. Who is this? Another maidservant? But she's elegant enough to be mistaken as the daughter of a big family. Sister Lu Tao. Miss lost her memory, and she can't recognize us anymore. Woo, woo. Miss. Lu Tao looked at Len Ruoxue with concern. But then she suddenly exploded and said fiercely, Miss, don't be scared. Lu Tao won't let that filthy woman bully you anymore. Lu Tao will definitely protect you and won't let this happen again, so you're called Lu Tao. Len Ruoxue looked at Lu Tao with her bright eyes. Interesting girl. A fiery girl hidden behind all that elegance. Miss, what did you just say? Lu Tao's eyes widened in disbelief. I asked you whether you're called Lu Tao. Leng Ruoxue frowned in slight displeasure. Oh. Miss. You've recovered. This is amazing. Lu Tao could tell that her young miss, despite being confused, looked alert and could even speak fluently. Her young miss had always been intellectually disabled since birth. She could still remember that the first time she tried to teach her their names, her young miss took ages to remember. So seeing this change, she couldn't hold back her excitement. Leng Ruoxue had no idea why the maidservants were so excited. It was very strange. Lu Tao, I can't remember what happened in the past. Can you tell me about it? Leng Ruoxue didn't want to ask Cui Zhu anymore. Cui Zhu really liked to cry. Yes, miss. Lu Tao will tell you from the time you were born. Lu Tao was obviously still brimming with joy. Lu Tao, just start from how I became hurt. Leng Ruoxue wanted to hear more, but Lu Tao wanted to recount everything that happened since Leng Ruoxue's birth. This was way too much. Miss, it's because of the seventh prince. Lu Tao paused and looked at her young miss. Seeing that her young miss didn't really react much to the name, she finally continued. Chapter 2, Reincarnation, 2. After listening for more than an hour, Leng Ruoxue finally sorted out what happened. It turned out that Lu Tao was so excited mainly because her foolish young miss became sober. This was absolutely great news for the general's mansion. This was because the young miss they were talking about was not only intellectually disabled and mentally unsound since birth, but she was also the fiancée of the seventh prince, the culprit who hurt her. Her so-called fiancé not only disliked her for being a fool, but he also had a lover. Her love rival was Su Nair from the Su family, one of the 5 great families. The foolish Leng Ruoxue had been very infatuated with her fiancé and had always done her best to be around him. She would chase after him whenever others mentioned where the seventh prince was. The Su family used her feelings for the seventh prince to trick her out, humiliated her in every possible way, and injured her. This led her to her coma that lasted for 3 days, which she only awakened from today. For moreover, she regained her sanity after waking up from the coma. No wonder the maidservants were so happy. Only Leng Ruoxue knew that it was not the foolish lady who woke up but a soul from another world. God allowed her to be reborn again even though she died in a plane crash, so she had to live a better life than her last life. 7th Prince Li Yu and Su Nair, just wait for me to exact my revenge. She had to compensate the original owner of the body in certain ways. She would not let her death be in vain. Miss, you are so beautiful. Qi Zhu combed Leng Ruoxue's hair while looking at her beautiful face. It was a face so breathtaking that she was unable to move her eyes away, and she stared herself silly. She knew that her young miss was a beauty since a long time ago, but she did not expect that she would be so beautiful without makeup. Leng Ruoxue was obviously much better than the previous few days. She looked at herself in the bronze mirror while sitting on the leather stool of the dressing table. She had a cold temperament, and her skin was tender and moisturized. Her beauty was enough for her to become the top beauty in the city, and she had to admit that this face was even more beautiful than the one she had in her previous life. However, her appearance was not like what it was when she first saw how she looked. At that time, not only did she have thick powder on her face, but she also painted herself with all sorts of colors, and the clothes she was wearing were fancy too. She knew from the residual memories of the body that the original owner of the body made herself this way. This was because she heard that that was what the 7th prince liked. Moreover, her grandfather loved her so much that he let her do whatever she wanted. Leng Ruoxue really didn't expect this body to retain its memories and fuse with her own memories. Unfortunately, there were not many useful ones. The one thing she remembered the most was the scumbag 7th prince. However, she also knew that it was impossible to count on the memories of an intellectually disabled person. The reason for her injury was basically what Lu Tao had explained. She could not blame the 2 maidservants for not protecting her. She could only blame that scumbag for being too attractive. Miss, these are the books you wanted. Lu Tao walked in with a few old books in her hand, interrupting her thoughts. Lu Tao placed the book gently in front of Leng Ruoxue and left the room with Qi Zhu so that they would not disturb their young miss reading. She knew that her young miss had fallen in love with reading since she woke up sober, and no one was allowed to interrupt her reading. There were 3 books in total. The first was Ling Feng Record, which recorded the extraordinary people and marvels on this continent. It also included the origin of this continent, the distribution of countries, geographical locations, and the like. The second was Summary of Spiritual Power, which introduced the sources of types of spiritual power, how to awaken spiritual power, etc. There was also a book named Introduction to Professions, which was mainly a book that introduced the types and levels of professions. These books might be the most basic, but they were also what she needed to understand the most right now. Leng Ruoxue first read Ling Feng Record and knew that this continent was called Ling Feng Continent. There were not only humans but also a wide range of spiritual beasts on the continent. And the current country she was in was the Eastern Lagoon Empire, one of the 5 most powerful countries on the Ling Feng continent. The 5 great countries and the 5 great families were the top powers in this world. The people in this world admired the strong, and only the strong would be respected by others. Even those who had good pedigrees but were weak would be cast aside. The foolish Leng Ruoxue was the best example. She had a noble background, but because she was a fool, even ordinary civilians in the Eastern Lagoon Empire looked down on her. Leng Ruoxue was happy with her current predicament. She did not want to continue being someone who was bullied and scolded like rubbish. She was going to be a powerhouse who rose above the 9 heavens. She would not be at the mercy of anyone. Introduction to Professions introduced that the world's most respected and powerful profession was spiritualist, while alchemists, artificers, and beast trainers were equally noble in status but were not admired by people because of the high threshold. Therefore, spiritualists could be said to be the most popular profession, but not everyone could become a high-status spiritualist. The first prerequisite for becoming a spiritualist was spiritual power awakening, and being able to awaken successfully to become a spiritualist probably only accounted for 1/1000 of the population. Becoming a spiritualist was also one of the basic requirements for becoming an alchemist, artificer, and beast trainer. This showed the importance of spiritualists. The former owner of this body was a fool and had never awakened spiritual power. Leng Ruoxue was not sure whether she had the qualifications to cultivate spiritual power. Moreover, the best age for spiritual power awakening was between 5 to 10 years old. She was already 15 years old this year, and she didn't know if she had any chance of awakening, but she had to try whether she could awaken or not. She had never been a person who would give up easily, not to mention that this was only her first test to becoming a powerhouse. Leng Ruoxue carefully read the content described in Summary of Spiritual Power, especially the important part about spiritual power awakening. She decided to carry out spiritual power awakening after she had learned it by heart. Lu Tao, Mississippi. Lu Tao heard the lady calling her and responded from outside the door. She opened the door, slowed her footsteps, and walked in softly. Lu Tao, I want to try spiritual power awakening. Remember, don't allow anyone to disturb me. Leng Ruoxue raised her beautiful eyes slightly and ordered. Miss. Lu Tao opened her mouth slightly, wanting to say something but stopped herself. In fact, she originally wanted to persuade her to wait for the general to return before she started her spiritual awakening. Her young miss was already 15 years old, and there was no precedent for someone on the Ling Feng continent to complete a successful spiritual awakening at 15 years old. She was afraid of the danger, but after several days of getting along with her young miss, she knew that her young miss had a strong desire to become a powerhouse. She knew that her young miss would not change her mind once she had decided. In the words of her young miss, how could she know that she would not succeed if she did not try? Moreover, how could she become a powerhouse if she did not have the courage to try? Lu Tao knew that her young miss was right, so she did not try to dissuade her after thinking about it. Chapter 3, Awakening of Spiritual Power. Miss, don't worry. This servant knows what to do. Lu Tao closed the door and exited the room. Leng Ruoxue is very satisfied with Lu Tao's performance. She might be a maidservant, but she knew her place and how to advance and retreat. She was someone teachable. Moreover, she had always liked such subordinates. In fact, Lu Tao might be treating her the same as she did with the silly Ruoxue, but she would not blame her for that. She could see that the two maidservants really cared for the silly Ruoxue and were constantly afraid that she would be injured, so they would therefore do more at times. However, this was because they were faithful after all. Thus, she would give them the opportunity to know that they did not need to treat her like the silly Ruoxue before. It would be best if they could wake up on their own and be used by her. Lu Tao seemed to have realized what was happening, but Qi Zhu might need some adjustment since she was too pure. Leng Ruoxue looked at the method again and confirmed the mnemonic chant so that she would not make any mistake. Then she sat cross-legged on the carpet and commenced the awakening. She closed her eyes and meditated silently with the mnemonic chant while seeing and feeling the spiritual energy in her body. The tiny, transparent, thread-like spiritual energy formed small clusters. This was the spiritual energy inherent in everyone's body, colorless and transparent. But it could only stay in the body and could not be used. However, it was precisely because of the existence of this spiritual energy that the lifespan of people in this world was much longer than the lifespan of people in her previous life. What she had to do now was to draw this spiritual energy out of the body and merge it with the immense spiritual energy of heaven and earth so that her body could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and use it as her own. She felt the originally static spiritual energy in her body begin to flow slowly from her dantian. She sensed the beckoning of the massive spiritual energy outside of her body as her spiritual energy moved very orderly and went bit by bit out of her body. She knew that this was the key to eliciting the spiritual energy, and no mistake could be made, so she waited patiently. After a long time, Leng Ruoxue opened her beautiful eyes. The brilliance in her eyes flowed, and her whole person felt more spiritual. She could feel herself being different from before, so it should be considered a success, right? Leng Ruoxue couldn't help thinking this, but she couldn't be sure. She hadn't seen anyone awakening with her own eyes after all. She looked down and found that her dantian no longer had a colorless and transparent cluster but a fist-sized colorful light ball. What does this mean? Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but be stunned. Why is it different from what Lu Tao in the book said? This situation wasn't mentioned in the book, but it seems to be a success even though it's a bit different from what I know. For Leng Ruoxue closed her eyes again and prepared to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. After awakening, the body would be able to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on its own and store it in the dantian. After storing enough spiritual energy, she would be able to break through and enter the next stage. The higher the stage, the more spiritual energy needed to advance. Similarly, the higher the stage, the more spiritual energy could be stored. Moreover, more spiritual energy would be needed for higher-level techniques. Soon after Leng Ruoxue closed her eyes and began to absorb spiritual energy, she saw more and more wisps of spiritual energy swarming toward her from all directions, rushing to burrow into her body. And she herself was surrounded by a huge sphere of spiritual power. If anyone were here now to see this, they would be scared to death. How could anyone absorb spiritual power like this? Sister Lu Tao, why hasn't Miss emerged yet? Cui Zhu's delicate face was full of worry. It had been 2 days, and she did not know what was happening with her young miss. Qi Zhu, Miss will succeed. We should have confidence in Mississippi. Lu Tao looked calm, but she was nervous as well. Shuer, where is my darling Shuer? When the 2 little servant girls heard the loud voice coming from outside the yard, they exchanged glances, and their hearts shook. We're dead. Old Master is back. The tall figure towered in front of them just as they were fumbling over what their replies should be to the Old Master. The 2 looked at each other, and a wry smile appeared on their young and beautiful faces. Alas, with the extent of the Old Master's love for their young miss, if he knew that she had done such a dangerous thing and that they did not know what the current situation inside was, the Old Master would go crazy. Besides, no one could stop the old master in the entire country if he really went crazy and unleashed his full strength, save for his best friend. 1. Why are you two standing outside instead of taking care of your young miss? Are you being lazy? General Leng Qingtian said with great displeasure. He had hurried to see his precious granddaughter the moment he returned to the general's mansion. He got the two maidservants to take care of his baby granddaughter, but they actually allowed her to become injured. He rushed back immediately when he received the news, not daring to delay for a moment. However, when he saw these two girls whom he had carefully selected standing outside Schwer's room panicking, his anger came up immediately. I would have dealt with them if I hadn't received the news on the road that my baby granddaughter has already awakened from her coma. Old master, it was Miss who asked us servants to stay outside. Miss said that no one is allowed to disturb her. Lu Tao, who knew their old master's temper very well, quickly said. Her nervous palms were sweating, and she only hoped that the young miss could immediately appear in front of the old master. What is Schwer doing in the room? Leng Qingshan's eyes were deep and unpredictable, but his tone was light and without emotion. Miss, tell me. The family law awaits if you dare to conceal anything. Leng Qingtian said with a serious face and stern tone. He deliberately released a trace of his might. These servants seemed to be taking his words lightly just because he was away for a few days. He knew something was amiss the moment he saw their nervousness. Lu Tao and Qi Zhu knelt on the ground with a plop. They were only at the great spiritualist stage and could not withstand the aggressive might. At this moment, the door of the room suddenly opened, and a breathtaking young girl dressed in red emerged. All three of them became dumbfounded. Chapter 4, The Top General Protector, 1, Miss? Lu Tao and Cui Zhu finally came back to their senses after being dazzled like idiots. They nearly drooled. Are you my Schwer? Leng Qingtian muttered as he looked at the face that was almost similar to his dead daughter-in-law's. Grandpa, don't you even recognize your own granddaughter? Leng Ruox's bright eyes looked at her grandfather. She could recall the extremely protective ways of that silly Ruox's grandfather, as she had inherited her memory and body. Yes, this grandfather protected all the silly Ruox's shortcomings and loved her very much, causing her to have a deep affection for him and was very dependent on her grandfather. She felt at home with this old man who loved the silly Ruoxue unconditionally. This old man hailed as the god of war on the battlefields also gave her an indescribable feeling of admiration, and the old man's love for his granddaughter was the familial love she had always longed for. This was why she had decided to treat this grandfather as her own before she met him. Seeing him in person strengthened her thinking even further. This grandfather was the famous god of war of the Eastern Lagoon Empire, a powerhouse at peak spiritual sovereign. He was an idol worshipped by countless people. However, this old man, her grandfather, in front of her was disheveled, his face full of stubble, his clothes all dusty. No one would believe it if he was introduced as the top general of the empire. Ha ha ha, that's great. My baby Schwer is really clear-headed. Grandpa is so happy. Come, let Grandpa take a good look. Leng Qingshan's tired face lit up. Her illness was cured, and she was finally worthy of being the daughter of his deceased son and daughter-in-law. Grandpa, you must be exhausted after traveling for so many days. Have a good rest and a good night's sleep. Granddaughter will not run away. Granddaughter will let look at me to your heart's content once you are well rested. The pinkish lips on Leng Ruox's absolutely beautiful face pouted a little rebelliously. Grandpa isn't tired. Grandpa is happy. Leng Qingshan's face couldn't hide his joy. Now that he saw his granddaughter with his own eyes, he knew that he was not dreaming, and his wish for many years had finally come true. Then Grandpa has to at least take a bath and change clothes. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile on her lips, her bright eyes shining as she said mischievously. Yes, I have to take a bath. Look at my dirty body. Schwer, wait for Grandpa. He disappeared after that. Miss. Lu Tao and Cui Zhu were excited. Seeing the spiritual energy surrounding her, they knew that she had successfully awakened. What are you doing on your knees? Get up. Leng Ruoxiu glanced at the two maidservants who were still kneeling and stretched out a slender jade finger. Her fingertips released a wisp of spiritual energy, and the silver-white spiritual energy slowly circled her skinny fingers. Silver-white. Great spiritualist, Cui Zhu exclaimed in surprise. Lu Tao was relatively calm, but both of them were speechless for a long time. 2 days ago, the young miss had no spiritual power. But today, she had awakened to become a great spiritualist. What kind of astonishing potential was this? Compared to the young miss, could those so-called geniuses be called geniuses? Was the young miss born to shock others? Their aptitude was pretty good, but it took almost 10 years to become great spiritualists, yet their young miss took only 2 days to achieve the same. No, maybe less than 2 days. They were speechless. Shuer. Leng Qingtian walked in steadily after freshening up, but he felt that the atmosphere in the room had become a little weird. What happened? Shuer, you've become a great spiritualist. Leng Qingtian was surprised. In fact, it was not difficult to see her level with his cultivation level. As the saying went, one would be blinded by concern. His mind was on Shuer's sane consciousness, so he hadn't really noticed Shuer's cultivation level. After all, who could have imagined that a person who just became clear-headed would suddenly become a great spiritualist? Leng Qingshan's face changed abruptly, as he seemed to have thought of something. When did this happen? How dare you hide it from me? Who gave you the courage to do that? Guards, come and lock them up to wait for my disposal. Leng Qingtian pointed at Lu Tao and Cui Zhu with an angry face as he ordered the guard at the door. When Shuer was injured, he hadn't had time to punish them. How dare they conceal such an important issue from him? Grandpa, this isn't their fault. I wanted to awaken my spiritual power. You go out first. Leng Ruoxiu wheedled her way on it and pulled on one of Leng Qingshan's arms to save the two maidservants. Shuer. Grandpa, my spiritual power has awakened, and now I am a great spiritualist. Is Grandpa unhappy? Leng Ruoxiu whispered softly, cozying up to him. Silly girl. Of course, Grandpa is happy. But what if there was any danger during your awakening when Grandpa was not by your side? Grandpa wouldn't be able to save you in that case. Grandpa just wants you to be safe. Do you want Grandpa to die of worry? Leng Qingshan's face became stern again after thinking about it. Grandpa, my dear Grandpa, you're blinded by concern. I know that there is no life-threatening awakening. How could you, a spiritual sovereign, have no idea? Leng Ruoxiu said with a light smile. Failure would still cause some damage to the body, but it would not be life-threatening. Lu Tao had already told her before she planned to try the awakening. It was mentioned in the book as well, so she knew it, but she still decided to try. After all, only when you became strong would your destiny be in your own hands. You silly girl, Leng Qingtian scowled deliberately, but he was obviously not so angry anymore. Come, tell Grandpa when you awakened and how you became a great spiritualist. Leng Qingtian also knew that he was a little caught up. I awakened yesterday, Leng Ruoxiu replied. And you became a great spiritualist today. Leng Qingtian had a face full of question marks. Such speed. Well, I began absorbing spiritual power after awakening yesterday, and then I already was a great spiritualist when I woke up today. Leng Ruoxiu did not expect the aptitude of this body to be so amazing. As far as she knew, even a genius with the best aptitude would take about 1.5 to 2 years to progress from the most basic spiritual practitioner to spiritualist. And it would take about 5 to 6 years to become a great spiritualist. Those with lower aptitudes would take longer. Lu Tao and Qi Zhu had upper-medium aptitude, and it took them about 8 years to cultivate to become great spiritualists. I never thought that my precious granddaughter was such an astonishing genius. Ha ha ha, that's great. Leng Qingshan's resolute and serious face was full of a triumphant expression. There was only continuous good news recently, elating him. Chapter 5, The Top General Protector, 2, Shuer, what attribute is your spiritual power? The spiritual power attributes of the Leng family were basically wind or fire. He had both wind and fire attributes, so spiritualists of the same rank were generally not his opponent. Otherwise, he would not be called a peak spiritual sovereign powerhouse. I'm not sure either. It's okay. Grandpa has test crystals. Grandpa will test it for you when there's time. It was difficult to see the attributes of others unless they used spiritual skills. However, Shuer had just become clear-headed, and he guessed that she had yet to understand many things very well. It was normal not to know what her attributes were. In fact, spiritualists who had just awakened could go to the spiritualist guild to test their attributes so that they could practice spiritual skills that suited them. Most large families had crystals ready for testing in order to facilitate testing the younger generations in the family. My little Shuer is now clear-headed, has become a spiritualist, and is a little beauty of the country. Let's see what other reasons 7th Prince Li Yu has not to marry you this time. Leng Qingtian caressed Leng Ruoxu's head lovingly as the topic turned to her marriage. In fact, he had thought about it on the way back. He didn't like the 7th prince at all, nor did he want to become related through marriage to the imperial family. But since Shuer liked the 7th prince so much, then the 7th prince had to marry her no matter whether he liked her or not. He had no say in it. How dare he want to break off the engagement? He was just an idiot dreaming. Grandpa, I don't want to marry the 7th prince. Leng Ruoxue pouted her pink lips and looked at her grandfather with watery eyes. Isn't the 7th prince Shuer's favorite? Why don't you want to marry him? It was best not to marry him since there were many problems with the imperial family, but he still had to ask clearly. He despised me and got others to humiliate me when I was a fool. Now that I am better, I understand now, so I don't want him anymore. Yes, you don't need him. He might be a prince, but he is not worthy of my Shuer. Tomorrow, Grandpa will enter the palace to break the engagement for my dear Shuer. General Leng was extremely protective. His family's children were good no matter how they were, and no one could bully them. Grandpa, the engagement must be broken, but Shuer's injury this time can't remain unsettled. Leng Ruoxue reminded him with a fox-like smirk. Don't worry. Grandpa knows what to do. Grandpa won't let Shuer be wronged. Leng Qingtian wouldn't let anyone hurt his precious granddaughter. Shuer knows that Grandpa loves Shuer the most. Grandpa, wait for me for a while. Leng Ruoxue thought about it and ran out. After a short while, Leng Ruoxue returned with a large white porcelain bowl in her hand. Shuer, what do you have in your hand? Grandpa, try it. Leng Ruoxue put the bowl in front of Leng Qingtian, looking at him expectantly. Noodles? Yes, Shuer made it myself. Grandpa, try it. Leng Ruoxue was very confident in her cooking skills. In her previous life, she was not only a gourmet but also had good culinary skills. She was definitely able to match up to those famous chefs. Okay. Grandpa will try it. Leng Qingtian picked a few strands with a pair of chopsticks and put them in his mouth. He was stunned and continued. He emptied the bowl in no time. Grandpa, how is it? Is it delicious? Leng Ruoxue was a little uncertain. There were too few seasonings in this world, and the ingredients were a little different, so she could not replicate the taste from her previous life. It's delicious. Delicious. Leng Qingtian even drank every drop of the soup. Originally, he was thinking he would say it was delicious even if it was not delicious. After all, it was Shuer's act of filial piety. When did Shuer learn to make noodles? Leng Qingtian was surprised while still feeling a little unsatisfied. He had never eaten such delicious noodles. Shuer saw the cook making it in the mansion previously, so Shuer tried to make it by myself these few days. Shuer remembered that it was Grandpa's birthday the day before yesterday, so Shuer wanted to make it for Grandpa. Leng Ruoxue had already thought about the reason just now, and the noodles were indeed made by her. It would have been difficult to explain otherwise. She did it because she was moved by the unconditional love of her grandfather. The familial affection she craved in her previous life came through in this life, so she cherished it. Shuer is so filial. Grandpa didn't dote on you for nothing. Leng Qingtian was very pleased that his granddaughter was so good. Miss, you're awake. Lu Tao heard the faint sound on the bed and pulled the pink bed curtain away. She had chatted with the old master until late last night, so she thought the young miss would sleep a bit more. Well, today's weather is good. Leng Ruoxue sat up on the bed and looked at the warm sunshine outside the window. Yes, today's weather is good, and it's Valentine's Day in the Eastern Lagoon Empire. There are many people on the streets. Cui Zhu walked in with a water basin and a face full of excitement. Leng Ruoxue got dressed, washed up, and then asked Lu Tao to help her with a simple hairstyle. Valentine's Day. She did not expect this world to also have Valentine's Day. Leng Ruoxue was a little curious since she did not know how different it was compared to Valentine's Day in her original world. Miss, this Valentine's Day has a history. Cui Zhu deliberately created suspense. 1. Tell me about it. According to the historical records of our Eastern Lagoon Empire, today is the day when the founding emperor and the empress of the Eastern Lagoon Empire became engaged. To commemorate their feelings, they set today as Valentine's Day. It is said that all the men and women who are engaged today will be blessed by the founding emperor, the simple little girl said with yearning. Leng Ruoxue nodded in understanding. Cui Zhu is already an adult and thinking about love. Miss, you're bullying me. Cui Zhu blushed and looked at her evil miss with tears in her eyes threatening to spill out at any moment. Is Grandpa up yet? Leng Ruoxue looked at Lu Tao, who had already set breakfast up. Old master has entered the palace. Leng Ruoxue didn't expect her grandfather to enter the palace so early. She knew that it was all for her. She was so touched and felt so happy that there was a grandfather who treated her like a princess and loved her unconditionally. Cui Zhu, sit down and eat. Leng Ruoxue saw Cui Zhu still standing even though Lu Tao was already seated. Cui Zhu was still looking at her with an incomparably resentful look. Leng Ruoxue could not help but find this simple child funny. Chapter 6, Robbery. 1. Mrs. bullying Cui Zhu, Qi Zhu murmured as she sat down at the table. Miss is just teasing you. Lu Tao couldn't help laughing. How did she not realize how adorable and interesting Cui Zhu was? Even she wanted to tease her. Lu Tao looked at her young miss. Her young miss had changed a lot since waking up from the coma. They were no longer allowed to kneel down before her, and they were asked to sit at the dining table together with her. She could still remember her young miss saying, although you are my maidservants, I hope that you will have a strong personality. Do you want to be a humble servant all your life? Or do you want to become someone successful? It's your choice. But I don't need people that only know how to wait upon me by my side. These words made Lu Tao truly realize that the young miss was no longer the silly young miss who needed them to help her with everything. The young miss now was aspiring to become a powerhouse whom everyone would admire. If they wanted to stay by the young miss' side, they had to keep up with her footsteps. Otherwise, they would only be getting farther and farther away from her, and she had decided to follow the young miss forever. After breakfast, let's go for a walk outside. Leng Ruoxue finished up her porridge. She had already spent a few days in this world, but she still hadn't explored the outside. In the Imperial Palace. Great General, please wait for a moment. I will go and inform His Majesty first, a eunuch said respectfully as he led the way while bowing lowly. Even the Emperor respected the Great General. Leng Qingtian nodded, but his face was expressionless, and no one could tell what was on his mind. He didn't have the mood to appreciate the beauty of the Imperial Garden. He just wanted to settle the matter quickly and go back home to his precious granddaughter. The scenery of the imperial palace was beautiful, but it was not as meaningful as spending time with his Schwer. Moreover, it wasn't his first time here. It wasn't long before the eunuch came back to lead him to the emperor's study. Your Majesty. Leng Qingtian bowed slightly to show his respect. Ah, my dear general is back. It must have been a long journey. Sitting on the dragon throne, Emperor Li Sun welcomed Leng Qingtian cordially. Your Majesty, the journey was fine, but my granddaughter is. Leng Qingtian deliberately didn't finish his sentence and made a very heartbroken and distressed face. Seeing Leng Qingshan's expression, the emperor couldn't help cursing in his head. This cunning old fox. You are really messed up this time. It seems like he won't be able to escape from marrying his granddaughter anymore. Yes, my dear general. Your Majesty, I hope you will uphold justice for my granddaughter. My dear general, I have already punished Yuer. But for the young lady of the Su family, she's not someone from the Eastern Lagoon Empire. Even if I want to punish her and vent anger for Ruoxue, there's nothing I can do about it. You are a senior who has served since my father's era, so I hope you will understand my difficulties. Of course, I have asked the Su family to bring her back and teach her a lesson. I'm sure she won't do it again. And the Su family is willing to compensate for hurting Ruoxue. Please give the youths another chance, and don't haggle over it with them. The emperor eloquently tried to persuade Leng Qingtian. He didn't want to offend the Su family, but neither could he displease an important official of the Eastern Lagoon Empire. He relied heavily on Leng Qingtian, and the entire Eastern Lagoon Kingdom needed this god of war. He only hoped that Leng Qingtian would give him, the emperor, some face and not haggle too much over it. Ruoxue was almost killed. I almost couldn't see her again. Your Majesty, I don't know how you are going to compensate us. Leng Qingshan's eyes narrowed with a sharp glare. He had long known that the emperor would say so he didn't expect much and didn't intend to go into it vehemently. Just like Schwer said, they could wait for a better opportunity to seek vengeance in the future. There was no need to go to extremes now. Now was the time to ask for more practical benefits. This cunning old fox wants to rob me. Emperor Li Sun wasn't pleased, but he still put on a smile. As long as this old fox agreed to stop fussing over this incident, he was willing to pay some price. He could always find the Su family to get it back. It was the Su family's young lad's fault in the first place. So what if they were one of the 5 great families? They shouldn't have provoked this lunatic. Dragons had reverse scales, and so did this cunning old fox. No one should touch it. Don't worry, my dear general. I will definitely make it up to Ruoxue, Li Sun said through his clenched teeth. Thank you, Your Majesty. Leng Qingtian smiled as he took out a piece of paper from his storage ring. Your Majesty, Schwer was seriously injured, and in order for her to recover, we need these medicinal herbs. But we can't really afford all of them, just take whatever you need from the Imperial Pharmacy, Li Sun said generously. Some medicinal herbs weren't an issue. Thank you, Your Majesty. Furthermore, here is a list of compensation we hope to get. Your Majesty and the Su family can just compensate with what's written here. I have no other presumptuous requests, Leng Qingtian said understandingly as he handed the list to the eunuch. The eunuch took the list and placed it on the emperor's desk. When Li Sun scanned through the list, his eyes immediately widened, and he almost choked. The eunuch quickly passed him a cup of water. After drinking the water, he was more composed. But the list still almost made him vomit blood in anger. There were only 10 items on the list, but each was priceless. Even if there was a price, there was no market. Take the crystal honey for example. The price had already inflated to 1,000 amethyst crystals per gram, but the amount on the list was 5 kilograms. It was ridiculous. Even with money, there was no place to buy it. Your Majesty, you can discuss the items on the list with the Su family, Leng Qingtian reminded, implying that the emperor didn't need to compensate by himself. Right. The Su family. The emperor immediately returned to composure from his initial shock and felt much better. With them, at least it won't be so bad. Your Majesty, I have another request. Ling Qingtian continued. What else, my dear general? The emperor's voice was even shaking slightly. Didn't he say there were no more presumptuous requests? Your Majesty, the seventh prince is talented and virtuous, and Ruoxue has always admired him. This time, she suffered an unexpected disaster because of the seventh prince. It's really, one. Chapter 7, Robbery, 2, Yes, my dear general. Your Majesty, I feel that Ruoxue is not a match for the seventh prince, so I hope you will agree to cancel the engagement. I wish the seventh prince a happy marriage with Miss Su. Ling Qingtian interrupted the emperor, not giving him a chance to finish speaking. The emperor was stunned. He thought he misheard. How can I let Ling Qingtian cancel the engagement? Although Ruoxue is a simpleton, the engagement is too important for Yuer. My dear general, the engagement was bestowed by the previous emperor, the emperor reminded him. Your Majesty, I am sure you still remember what the late emperor promised me when he proposed the engagement. Ling Qingtian looked seriously into the emperor's eyes. My dear general, have you decided? There was nothing the emperor could do. He didn't want to cancel the engagement. After all, it was in Yuer's greatest interest. Unfortunately, Yuer did not understand. 3. Yes, I have decided. Ling Qingtian took out the engagement token from his storage ring and handed it to the eunuch. The emperor took the token and instructed the eunuch to fetch the one he had to return. One Emperor Li Sun went to a side hall after Ling Qingtian left. It was in the most inconspicuous corner of the imperial palace with absolutely no grandeur. But this place was the most restricted place in the entire palace because a very important person was living here. An old man in plain cotton clothing who was watering his flowers and plants raised his head. His wrinkled face frowned in displeasure. What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you not to disturb me if there's nothing important? The old man scolded. He was getting more and more disappointed with his descendants. None of them were capable. Old ancestor. What's wrong? The old man continued to fiddle with his flowers and plants. Ling Qingtian just came. Emperor Li Sun's face was somewhat tense. Then? I told him what you told me to tell him. Then what's the problem? The old man didn't even bother to raise his head. He proposed to cancel the engagement, the emperor said carefully. You agreed. The old man finally raised his head and looked straight at Li Sun with his turbid eyes. I can't disagree. My imperial father promised him that he could cancel the engagement at any time if he was not happy with it. The engagement was only an expedient political move for him to secure the throne. It was because it was only a temporary engagement that Ling Qingtian had agreed. Ah, fine. Fine. The old man sighed and continued fiddling with his flowers and plants. Your Majesty, General Leng has emptied the warehouse of the imperial pharmacy. Just as Emperor Li Sun returned to his resting palace, the eunuch who had led Ling Qingtian ran over in a panic. 2. What? Say it again. The emperor thought he had heard wrong. Your Majesty, General Leng has emptied the warehouse of the imperial pharmacy. The young eunuch knelt on the floor, trembling. He knew he was in big trouble this time. The emperor was notoriously stingy, and General Leng had caused heavy losses to the emperor this time. There were a lot of herbs in the imperial pharmacy and even some extremely precious ones. The emperor likely didn't care too much about the common herbs, but the precious ones that were hard to find. Why didn't you stop him? The emperor's face turned green with fury. This servant couldn't stop him. General Leng took out more than 10 storage rings at once. Before this servant had time to react, he already stored everything into the rings. The young eunuch wailed. 6. Useless. All useless. Guards, drag him out, the emperor angrily ordered the guards. Your Majesty, please calm down. Your health is more important. Eunuch Lu, the chief eunuch standing at the side, cautiously persuaded the emperor to calm down. Serving the emperor was like serving a tiger. Even though he was a trusted aide of the emperor, he still had to be careful in this situation. Ling Qingtian. Outrageous. The emperor gritted his teeth, his handsome face distorting in anger. Your Majesty, please calm down. This servant is sure that Ling Qingtian came prepared. Your Majesty was unprepared, Eunuch Lu said, implying that Ling Qingtian had planned this long ago to scheme against the emperor. Eunuch Lu, do you have any plan to save some face for me? The emperor looked expectantly at his favorite eunuch. Your Majesty, this servant thinks we need a long-term plan. But losing some money and items in exchange for the general no longer investigating the seventh prince and Miss Su should already be the best result. Eunuch Lu analyzed for the emperor. He knew that the emperor loved the seventh prince the most and was afraid that the general would not let go of the matter of his granddaughter being injured. The emperor thought for a moment. What you said is very reasonable. Come, arrange the carriage to go to Fragrance Palace. Thunder Knight, we gained a lot today. Ling Qingtian cheerful shared telepathically with his spirit beast. His spirit beast was a level 9 holy beast, a flying thunder leopard. It had the dual attributes of lightning and wind, and it was adept at flying. Not only was it very fast, but it was also one of the best holy beasts at attacking. Thunder Knight was introverted, and it just nodded its huge head in response to its master. I just realized today how enjoyable looting is. If there's another chance in the future, we shall do it together. Ling Qingtian laughed arrogantly in his head. 3 in the spirit beast space, the giant black leopard was at a loss for words. Master has taken a liking to this kind of trickery, and he even wants me to join him. But I am a good, law-abiding beast. It must be Mississippi. She influenced Master. After all, Master has always been very upright, and it was all her idea this time. She's really formidable. No one should ever provoke her. Miss, why did you get us to dress up like this? Cui Zhu looked at her unfamiliar self in the mirror, feeling very puzzled. There was a girl too ordinary who could blend into any crowd. Are there a lot of people who know you in Phoenix City? Ling Ruoxue threw a question back instead while her beautiful eyes scanned back and forth between the two other girls. She was satisfied with her masterpiece. Of course. Everyone in Phoenix City knows that Sister Lu Tao and I are from the General's mansion. Cui Zhu answered. They had to reveal their identities so that no one dared to bully the young miss. Chapter 8, The Beast Pretending to be Pitiful, 1, That's right. I don't want others to recognize you too, Ling Ruoxue said indifferently. She had said things very clearly before. It would be best if they could understand, but if they still didn't understand, she wouldn't bother to explain. She would not leave useless people around her. Miss, Lu Tao understands, Lu Tao said hurriedly before Cui Zhu could react and signaled Cui Zhu to be silent with her eyes so as not to cause the young miss to be unhappy. Keep up then. Ling Ruoxue finished speaking, turned, and walked out the door. March in Phoenix City was the time when spring flowers started blooming. The weather today was especially refreshing. The wind was warm, the sun was shining, and the streets were bustling, mostly with pairs of lovers. The customs of the Eastern Lagoon Empire were rather open and carefree, and people were able to love freely. Ling Ruoxue looked at the traditional buildings on the streets, the dazzling arrays of shops, and the products that belonged to this world with a relaxed mood. She did not even realize that her peerless beauty was causing a storm on the streets, nor did she notice the deep gazes that had been watching her. Ling Ruoxue walked into a pet store. She saw the word Feng on the store sign when she entered. She knew that this was the second most popular shop among the 5 great families. The store area was not small, and it was divided into 2 floors. When she walked in, she first saw a few rows of shelves. The shelves were full of cages for pets. In the cages, the cute little beasts were either lying on their stomachs or standing. Although they were being sold as pets, they were all spirit beasts of relatively low level, cute in appearance, without any aggressiveness, and easy to tame. They had all been tamed, and no contract was required. They were the most suitable pets for noble ladies and young misses. Len Ruoxua loved small animals, especially dogs. She had once raised one herself, but it got into an accident later. Since then, she had not raised any pets. Now that she saw these cute little things, she was very excited and wanted to buy one to raise. But she could only recognize bunnies among the beasts. Although the bunnies were very cute, she didn't have much interest in them. At this moment, she clearly felt that a gaze was watching her. She subconsciously searched for it and saw a cage in a somewhat isolated corner. There was a small black beast enclosed in the cage. Is it a cat? She thought it was a cat because it looked a little like a Persian cat, but it had a large fox-like tail. It was lying in the cage with its big, round, blue eyes looking at her pitifully. This gaze really made her not have the heart to reject it. Well, she admitted that it was cute. This little thing was really good at pretending to be innocent and pitiful. If she hadn't caught the lightning-fast flash of cunning in this little thing's eyes, she would have been fooled. The clerk, who had been lost in her beauty for a long time since she entered the store, finally recovered. He hurriedly stepped forward and looked at Len Ruoxua in amazement. "Miss, may I help you with anything?" the clerk said very politely, fully demonstrating his professionalism. Len Ruoxua pointed at the little guy in the cage. "How much for it?" "Miss wants to buy it." "Miss, to tell you the truth, it's not in good physical condition now. I am afraid it will not last long. There are many cute pets in our shop, and there are better ones upstairs. Why don't you look at others?" He tried to dissuade her and was only short of telling her not to buy it directly. Len Ruoxua looked at the enthusiastic clerk with some amusement. "I am only interested in it." "How much for it?" "Miss, are you sure you want to buy it?" "Yes." Len Ruoxua nodded gently. How could this little thing be about to die? Even though its black fur looked dull and its small body thin, seeming as though the wind could blow it away, Len Ruoxua didn't believe that it was as weak as it appeared to be. 50 gold coins, the clerk said helplessly. He said everything he should say, yet this young lady still insisted on buying, so it was not possible for him not to sell it. However, he did not violate the Feng family's business ethics on honesty and integrity. Len Ruoxua motioned for Lu Tao to pay. Then she took the weak-looking thing from the clerk, turned around, walked out of the store, and then shopped around again. Spring Wind House. That's a restaurant, right? I'm hungry, so let's go have something to eat. Len Ruoxua looked at the small 3-story building with exquisite and luxurious furnishings not far away. Miss, let's go somewhere else. This place isn't good, Cui Zhu said with an unnatural expression. Isn't good? What's wrong? I've decided. I want to eat here. She was really hungry. Miss, this time even Lu Tao spoke out to stop her. Her expression was not very good. Give me a reason. Len Ruoxua's eyes flashed unpleasantly. She hated being hungry. Miss once went to the Spring Wind House for the 7th prince, but something happened later, and you are now forbidden to enter. Lu Tao explained cautiously, for fear that her young miss would be angry. That damn 7th prince again. Len Ruoxua really hated that nasty 7th prince. He actually prevented her from even entering a place to eat. This sealed the tragic end of the unlucky 7th prince in the future. Let's go home. Len Ruoxua lost the desire to eat out. Back at the general's mansion, Len Ruoxua lay lazily on a recliner after eating. She held the now-fed little beast in her arms, basking in the sun, very relaxed. Lu Tao, are there any other places in Phoenix City where I am not welcomed? Len Ruoxua asked casually while eating fruit and feeding her little pet in passing. Only the businesses of the Su family. The Spring Wind House is also owned by the Su family, Lu Tao explained. 2. The Su family. Very good. she craved it in her heart. Anyone who dares to provoke me, Len Ruoxue, will live to regret it, Len Ruoxue thought as her hand gently stroked the soft fur of the little beast. Suddenly, she felt a tingling pain in her fingertips. This ungrateful little thing actually bit her. But before she could get angry, she felt a little dizzy, and then she heard a voice in her mind saying, I am willing to enter into a soul bond contract with you, where our souls will accompany each other through life and death. Then a gorgeously intricate purple contract array enveloped her and the little beast, and the contract was formally established. 4. Chapter 9, The Beast Pretending to be Pitiful, 2. At the side, Lu Tao was a little dumbfounded. Miss, actually made a contract with a low-level spirit beast. What kind of contract is this? Lu Tao was stunned and speechless because this contract array was something she had never seen before. After more than 10 minutes, the gorgeously intricate purple contract array slowly disappeared. Len Ruoxue held the little black beast in both hands, her beautiful eyes shining with raging flames. She stared at the little beast fiercely, wanting to bore a hole in its small body with her stare. But the little beast used its cute appearance and watery blue eyes with tears spinning in them to stare at her innocently and pitiful. Pretending to be pitiful again. Len Ruoxue was even angrier. If it weren't a little beast, Len Ruoxue would have choked it to death. However, while she could be cold-blooded to humans, she had always been very caring toward animals, so she really couldn't do it. Big sister, woo. Big sister is so fierce. An immature male voice sounded in Len Ruoxue's ears. Are you the one talking? Len Ruoxue looked at the little beast in front of her suspiciously because most spirit beasts would address their owners as masters after establishing a contract. Baby can talk with big sister after making the contract. The little black beast nodded aggrievedly and looked at Len Ruoxue with a perfectly guileless look. Don't you dare look at me with this expression. The flames of anger in Len Ruoxue's eyes burned more vigorously. Tell me. Why did you establish the contract without my consent? Len Ruoxue's face was covered with frost. She hated the feeling of being forced by deceit. B-baby likes big sister. The fluffy beast's face actually showed a shy expression. So you forced it on me just because you like me, Len Ruoxue was speechless. Moreover, what was that soul bond contract? Why had she never heard of it before? She knew two types of contracts. Equal contracts, the two parties who entered into the contract were of equal status as friends and could not be forced. If one party was injured and died, the other party would not suffer any harm. Master-slave contracts, this kind of contract was a type of forced contract where the initiative was in the hands of the human. The status of the two parties was not equal. The human was the master, and the spirit beast would follow. If the master died, the spirit beast would also die. However, if the spirit beast died, the master would not be affected. This type of contract was the most unfair way of contracting with the spirit beasts. This was also the main reason why some proud spirit beasts would rather die than be in a contract with humans. There were very few humans who would be willing to enter into an equal contract with spirit beasts after all. However, it was precisely because of master-slave contracts that the status of beast trainers was becoming better and better. What contract did you just enter into with me? She still remembered the voice that said, our souls will accompany each other through life and death. This sort of contract was not within the scope of her knowledge. It's the soul bond contract. Baby will always be with big sister and will never leave you, the little beast said happily. Then what if I die? Then baby will also die. If big sister is alive, baby will be alive. If big sister dies, baby will also die. Baby will never leave big sister. 2. Wait, what do you mean by never leave me? It shouldn't be what I'm thinking, right? Is this little thing planning to rely on me? Is it not enough to follow me for this life? It wants to follow me in all my reincarnations? This is what it means, right? Len Ruoxue was uncomfortable. What kind of lousy contract is this? How can it be so overbearing? And the contract has already been established. She had no chance to refuse and could only live with it. Not only that, but she also had to protect this useless-looking thing, which looked as though it did not possess any bit of offensive power, lest it died and she died with it. 1. Where did you learn this contract? Leng Ruoxue was very curious. This contract was not within the scope of people's cognition, but a little beast actually knew about it and tricked her into it. She was so angry just thinking about it. Baby doesn't know. Baby knew about it ever since baby was born. The little beast knew that it had annoyed the big sister it liked, so it was a little cautious, its big watery eyes still peeking at Leng Ruoxue from time to time. Leng Ruoxue could see that it was an underage child. Even if she were to probe further, it would not know. Is baby your name? Leng Ruoxue heard it calling itself baby. The little beast named Baby nodded, and its big blue watery eyes looked at Leng Ruoxue with affection. Leng Ruoxue thoughtfully looked at the little beast in front of her. Could it be that this little guy isn't a low-level spirit beast? As far as she knew, only advanced spirit beasts with intelligence could name themselves, and low-level spirit beasts didn't have that IQ. However, she didn't expect this little thing to know what kind of spirit beast it was, so she did not ask anymore since she would know one day anyway. Big sister will call you baby from now on then. Leng Ruoxue said, finally recognizing this younger brother. After all, they were hanging on the same rope now. 3. Miss, old master has returned. Got it. Leng Ruoxue, who was teasing baby, stood up and walked to Listening Snow Pavilion. In her room, she saw her grandfather sitting in a chair with a smug face, eating the pastries that she had ordered prepared in advance. Shuer, come here quickly. Leng Qingtian couldn't wait to tell Leng Ruoxue about his performance in the palace as soon as he saw her. Leng Ruoxue listened quietly while pouring tea for her grandfather. In fact, even if her grandfather didn't tell her, she could guess how angry the emperor would be, especially for breaking off the engagement. A simpleton had declined the marriage with the 7th prince most loved by the emperor. It wouldn't sound pleasant if such news were to spread. Grandpa, I'm planning to train in seclusion, Leng Ruoxue suddenly said after patiently listening to Leng Qingtian. There were too many things she wanted to learn, but she was too weak now. A great spiritualist might be considered a powerhouse in the eyes of ordinary people, but it is far from enough for her. She hoped to break through as soon as possible and advance to spiritual monarch because only then would she be equivalent to stepping into the threshold of the powerhouses. It might only be one stage between great spiritualist and spiritual monarch, but it was not easy to break through. Throughout history, countless practitioners were stuck at the great spiritualist stage. It would be possible to use spirit pills to help with the breakthrough if they were from big families, but only the elites in the families could enjoy this treatment. Disciples with ordinary aptitudes would not have that qualification. Moreover, only when she advanced to the spiritual monarch stage could she learn the advanced spiritual skills she was most interested in. 1. Chapter 10, Preparations to Enter Seclusion, Grandpa Supports You. Leng Qingtian was actually very happy and pleased to see his precious granddaughter working so hard. One must know that while the Leng family only had a few people, they had never been weak. He was just a tiny bit reluctant, as it had been a long time since he saw his granddaughter. Shuer, this is for you. Leng Qingtian took out a storage ring and gave it to his granddaughter. There are medicinal herbs from when I robbed the palace this time, as well as various spiritual skills collected by Grandpa over the years. However, other than the fire and wind elements, the others are only at the elementary and intermediate levels. Alas, he didn't expect their Leng family would have a little monster who had all the spiritual power attributes. He was shocked when he tested Shuer with the test crystal yesterday because her talent was really too abnormal. Not only did she possess all the spiritual power attributes, but her affinity with spiritual power was above the superior grade, and even her mental strength was above the superior grade. He was dumbfounded at that time because it meant that the Leng family would have an anomaly with all the important professions of spiritualist, alchemist, artificer, and beast trainer. The Ling Feng continent had a long history, but there had never been anyone with all four professions. Perhaps it was because you could not have your cake and eat it too that spiritualists might not become artificers, alchemists, or beast trainers, but these professions had to become spiritualists first. Artificers and alchemists required fire attribute spiritual power, while beast trainers required both affinity with spirit beasts and mental strength to be at least at the superior grade. For a spiritualist, high mental strength was undoubtedly beneficial, but the most important thing for a spiritualist was not mental strength but spiritual power affinity. The higher the affinity, the greater the future achievements. That was to say, even for a fire attribute spiritualist, if they did not have superior grade spiritual power affinity and mental strength, it was impossible for them to become an alchemist or artificer. And an alchemist or artificer with superior grade mental strength but not superior grade spiritual power affinity could not become a powerful spiritualist. 8 For anomalies with fire attribute spiritual power and superior grade affinity and mental strength, unless they belonged to or were sheltered by certain top forces, the major forces would never allow them to mature. After considering the situation, he immediately told Shuer not to let anyone know her talent before she had absolute strength. Leng Ruoxue took the storage ring from her grandfather, which recognized her as its owner. Then she made some preparations before entering seclusion. Before going into seclusion, she looked at Baby, who was reluctant to part, a little helplessly. Baby, big sister is going into seclusion. You have to be obedient, okay? Big sister, you have to come out quickly. Baby will miss you. Baby said with tears in his eyes. Okay, Grandpa, I'm going. 3 Shuer, Grandpa will miss you too. Leng Qingtian said quickly. How can a little beast steal the attention of my darling granddaughter? Leng Ruoxue didn't expect her grandfather to actually compete with a little spirit beast. She couldn't help finding it a little funny, lessening the sadness of the brief separation a lot. After bidding farewell, she walked toward the secret room. Leng Ruoxue walked into the secret room and looked around. The room was very spacious and bright. There were large night illuminating pearls hanging on the walls and a spirit jade bed with a round cushion on it placed against the middle of the back wall. There was also an exquisite sandalwood table and a bookshelf on the left side of the bed filled with books, most of which were related to cultivation. In each of the 4 corners of the room, there was a stone pillar inlaid with spirit crystals of various colors, which were for gathering spiritual energy. Grandpa said that an ancestor of the Leng family built this secret room. The spiritual energy inside is at least twice as strong as outside. Such a room is one of the best even among top forces. Leng Ruoxue sat cross-legged on the spirit jade bed. Spirit jade had the effect of gathering spiritual energy, so she felt the abundance of spiritual energy as soon as she sat on the bed. But she didn't intend to start absorbing the spiritual energy immediately. Instead, she started reading first, and then she took out the spiritual skills that her grandfather gave her and started cultivating. Spiritual power attributes were divided into 7 types: fire, wind, water, earth, wood, light, and darkness. The spiritual power of each attribute had its own spiritual skills. The levels of spiritual skills were divided into elementary, intermediate, advanced, and heavenly. Spiritual practitioners could cultivate elementary spiritual skills, and spiritualists and great spiritualists could cultivate intermediate spiritual skills. Only at the spiritual monarch stage could you cultivate advanced spiritual skills. Moreover, if you wanted to cultivate advanced spiritual skills of a certain attribute, you first had to cultivate the elementary and intermediate levels of these spiritual skills. In addition, you had to cultivate spiritual skills according to your own level step by step, from the elementary to the advanced level without skipping. For spiritualists, the importance of spiritual skills was self-evident. But elementary skills were not difficult to learn. If someone awakened as a spiritualist, they only needed to go to the Spiritualist Guild to obtain elementary skills for free. If they wanted to learn intermediate spiritual skills, they could either buy them or go to an academy to learn. But if they wanted to learn advanced spiritual skills, it was best to go to an academy. It was very rare for them to be available on the market. Even if they were to buy one, it might not be suitable for their attributes. As for heavenly spiritual skills, they were probably only available in the hands of the top families and powerful spiritualists. They were absolutely priceless, and there was no market for them. Her grandfather had given her elementary and intermediate spiritual skills of every element, and the fire and wind elements had advanced and heavenly spiritual skills. It could be seen from this that the Leng family's background was very strong. After Leng Ruoxue learned all the elementary spiritual skills, she started on the intermediate ones. When she was tired, she would read and spend the rest of her time meditating and absorbing spiritual energy. Among all the elementary and intermediate spiritual skills, Leng Ruoxue's favorites were the fire element explosive flames art and the wood element restraint technique. Although they were only intermediate spiritual skills, they were very useful in combat. Explosive flames art was an attack-type skill, while the restraint technique was an auxiliary skill. If she were to add on the wind element quick wind art and used all three skills in battle, it would probably be bullying. But she was likely the only one who thought this way because not everyone had all the spiritual power attributes like her. Moreover, people with wood attribute spiritual power were very rare, so the possibility of someone using all three spiritual powers was really too low. Leng Qingtian was sitting on a stone bench not far from the secret room. The stone table in front of him was full of delicious food that he was enjoying with tea. But his eyes were on the little beast lying motionlessly outside of the secret room. His precious granddaughter had given him a task, so he had to protect this little thing related to his granddaughter's life. He didn't want to place his granddaughter in any danger because of his negligence, so he didn't dare to let this little thing out of his sight. But there was one thing he could not understand. Since his granddaughter was afraid that this little beast would be in danger, and this little beast refused to be too far from Shuer, why didn't he enter the spirit beast space? Could it be that these two novices did not know there was such a space? The more he thought about it, the more possible he felt his guess was. 4. Chapter 11, Advancement. In fact, before Leng Ruoxue went into seclusion, she wanted baby to enter the spirit beast space. But it had been impossible to convince him, and he even claimed that he was not a spirit beast. He didn't want to stay there, and he wanted to protect his big sister outside. So Leng Ruoxue had no choice but to leave him in her grandfather's care. Baby. Leng Qingtian called out the little beast's name as he walked to his side. Lying on the floor, baby didn't even bother to look up. His big tail even covered his body tightly. This little beast named Baby didn't pay any attention to him, making Leng Qingtian feel a little awkward. After all, it had already been more than 10 days since he had begun caring for and feeding this little thing every day, yet Baby didn't show a hint of gratefulness. Master, Eunuch Lu is here. A butler interrupted Leng Qingtian, who was thinking about how to redress any errors he could have made. This really isn't a good time, Leng Qingtian said, feeling somewhat annoyed. Guard here and prohibit anyone from approaching. After instructing his subordinates, Leng Qingtian walked slowly toward the main hall. Greetings, Great General. Eunuch Lu, the Emperor's chief eunuch, hurriedly stood up and bowed deeply upon seeing Leng Qingtian. Although the Emperor favored him, he dared not offend General Leng. If he offended him, even the Emperor might not be able to preserve him. No need to be so polite, Eunuch Lu. Please take a seat, Leng Qingtian said politely. Are you here to deliver my compensation? Leng Qingtian smiled. It had been more than 10 days, so everything should have already been collected. Eunuch Lu took out a storage ring and handed it to Leng Qingtian. Great General, the compensation you requested is in this ring. Please check if the compensation is correct so that this servant can go back to report on the completion of this task. Leng Qingtian candidly began to shift the items from the ring to his own, taking stock of the inventory one by one. There are no problems, Leng Qingtian said after taking inventory. General Leng, please receive this imperial edict. Eunuch Lu exclaimed suddenly. Then without even reading the edict, he directly handed it to Leng Qingtian with both hands and hurriedly turned around, preparing to leave. Eunuch Lu, you haven't read the imperial edict yet. why are you in such a hurry to leave? Ling Qingtian quickly said upon seeing that Eunuch Lu was planning to slip away. He didn't even need to read the edict to know that it wouldn't be anything good. General Leng, His Majesty said that you could read the imperial edict on your own. His Majesty is still waiting for this servant to report back, so please excuse me. With that, Eunuch Lu hurriedly mounted his flying spirit beast and departed. Ling Qingtian read the edict and then furiously tossed it aside. Humph. In his dreams, the emperor intended to drag him forcefully to the seventh prince's side because it was another decree of marriage. He had cancelled the engagement with the seventh prince. But the emperor bestowed a marriage to Shuer and the seventh prince's aunt's second son, who was frail and sickly. And afraid that he would reject the marriage on the spot, Eunuch Lu didn't even dare to read it. Actually, it was better that Eunuch Lu didn't read it. He could pretend that he didn't see it, and the emperor would unlikely be able to do anything to him. For inside the secret room, Leng Ruoxue sat cross-legged on the spirit jade bed and absorbed the rich spiritual energy. After a few days of continuous cultivation, Leng Ruoxue's body had abundant spiritual power. Through introspection, she saw that the light ball of spiritual power in her body was growing and beginning to rotate. She increased her speed of absorbing spiritual power, and the spiritual power all around flowed toward her body. As the spiritual power in her body increased, she felt her spiritual power become saturated. She knew that the only way for her to continue absorbing spiritual power was to break through the barrier before her. She decided that there was no better time than now to break through, so she channeled all the spiritual power in her body and blasted the barrier once, twice. Finally, she heard a sound resembling a crack. Immediately after, heaven and earth laws descended upon her, and she knew that she had advanced to spiritual monarch. Miss has advanced. Outside the secret room, Lu Tao and Cui Zhu exclaimed happily. The moment they saw the heaven and earth laws descend, they knew their young miss had successfully broken through. Prior to spiritual monarch, heaven and earth laws would not descend upon advancement. Only after advancing to spiritual monarch would you enjoy such treatment. The descent of heaven and earth laws would give the cultivator sizable benefits, such as widening the meridians. This was a reward from the heavens granted to the cultivator. And the more spiritual power absorbed during the descent of the heaven and earth laws, the more beneficial it was for future cultivation. 3. Why didn't baby change at all? Lu Tao and Cui Zhu stared at the little beast without a single difference, feeling puzzled. When the young miss advanced, the little beast should have also benefited. But after the heaven and earth laws baptized the little beast, why was he still the same? Shuer advanced? When Ling Qingtian, who had been settling matters in his study, felt the descent of the heaven and earth laws, he bolted out of the room. Yes. Miss has advanced. Lu Tao said. Good. This is excellent news. Ling Qingtian was overjoyed, the elation written all over his face. Old master, baby just gained some benefits as well, but why didn't he change at all? Cui Zhu was feeling puzzled and was looking at their old master with anticipation. This little thing can't be understood by common sense, Ling Qingtian said after deliberating. Normally, the advancement of the master would spur their spirit beast to advance as well. But not only did this little thing not advance, it still looked as weak and puny as before. Ling Qingtian didn't understand what was going on. Miss should be coming out soon. Cui Zhu said. Alas, old master doesn't know. It shouldn't be so soon. Continue keeping watch here and immediately notify me if anything happens. Ling Qingtian returned to his study, feeling relieved that Shuer had successfully advanced. In the secret room, Leng Ruoxue was undergoing the baptism of the heaven and earth laws. The meridians in her entire body widened at least twofold, and her speed of absorbing spiritual power was faster. She remembered her grandfather telling her that heaven and earth laws would descend when she advanced to spiritual monarch, and the more spiritual power absorbed before the heaven and earth laws dissipated, the more beneficial it would be for future cultivation. Thus, she did not stop and continued absorbing spiritual power diligently. As the heaven and earth laws dissipated, Len Ruoxua stopped absorbing, and her fingertips released a wisp of spiritual power. It was light golden in color, which was unique to the spiritual power of spiritual monarchs. And to her surprise, she found out that she was already at peak elementary spiritual monarch and was only one step away from intermediate spiritual monarch. Chapter 12, I Have an Elder Brother. 1. From the moment you became a spiritual monarch and the following stages of spiritual sovereign, spiritual supremacy, and spiritual deity, they each had the level of elementary, intermediate, advanced, and peak. Once your spiritual power was fully saturated, advancement would happen automatically. However, heaven and earth laws would not descend for the advancement to the intermediate, advanced, and peak levels. Heaven and earth laws would only descend for the advancement to spiritual monarch, spiritual sovereign, spiritual supremacy, and spiritual deity. Although Len Ruoxua's advancement was successful, and she had stopped absorbing spiritual energy, she did not immediately leave the secret room. Instead, she began to cultivate advanced spiritual skills. You could only cultivate heavenly spiritual skills at the spiritual sovereign stage, so she planned to finish cultivating the advanced fire and wind element skills before leaving. This way, she would at least have the ability to protect herself. The advanced fire element spiritual skill, Prairie Blaze Spark, was one of the most powerful advanced fire element skills. Moreover, it was a group attack skill. It could be considered as the upgraded version of the Explosive Flames art, but its power was several times stronger. Flame Feathers was also one of the mightiest advanced fire element skills, but Flame Feathers was a single target skill. The advanced wind element skill, Wind Chasing art, was primarily used to increase movement speed during combat, and it was the upgraded version of the Quick Wind art. These advanced spiritual skills were the ones that piqued Len Ruoxua's interest, so she cultivated them first. After learning these skills to a point where she was fluent, she intended to leave seclusion, lest her grandfather and the others have to wait for her anxiously. She decided to cultivate other skills at her own pace later. When Len Ruoxua opened the door of the secret room, a fluffy little beast jumped into her arms. "Big sister, baby missed you so much." Baby laid needily in her arms. Len Ruoxua looked somewhat helplessly at baby lying in her arms, oblivious to why this little thing loved sticking to her. "Big sister missed you too," Len Ruoxua coaxed. When big sister wasn't around, was baby a good boy? Big sister, baby was a very good boy. The little beast raised a small paw, as if he was swearing. "Miss, baby said he wanted to protect you and was unwilling to leave the door of the secret room," Cui Zhu said to her young miss with a look of adoration on her face. Len Ruoxua looked down at the shy little beast in her arms. She initially thought that this little thing just said it casually, but she didn't expect him to really not move an inch and protect her at the door of the secret room. Even without doing this, just his intention was enough to touch her heart, and the initial annoyance she felt slowly faded away. From this moment on, she decided to love baby as her little brother. "Where is Grandpa?" Len Ruoxua's beautiful eyes glanced around. "Old master is in his study," Lu Tao answered. "I'll go see Grandpa." Holding baby in her arms, Len Ruoxua walked toward the study. "Old man, your darling granddaughter is finally clear-headed." "Are you very happy?" commented the middle-aged man sitting opposite Ling Qingtian in the study. "Of course I'm happy." "You must be so happy that you forgot you had a grandson." "Humph." The middle-aged man snorted, a displeased look on his face. "How could I forget? Ruhan is the grandson I'm proudest of." Len Ruoxua heard the voices coming from the study and stopped in her tracks. "Grandfather has a guest." While she was contemplating whether to go in or to return later, the door of the study opened. "Schwer! Ha ha ha, Grandpa's dearest is finally out. Come. Let Grandpa take a good look at you." When Ling Qingtian saw his precious granddaughter standing at the door, his face lit up, and a wide smile crept up on his face as he hugged her. "Humph. Grandpa has a guest." Upon hearing the snort, Leng Ruoxue turned her gaze toward the source. She saw a middle-aged man who wasn't particularly handsome but had an extraordinary presence. At first glance, she could tell that he had been in a high position for a long time. Although he was restraining his imposing manner currently, no one would doubt that he was a powerhouse. However, this person didn't seem to like her, so she began wondering if she had offended him somehow before. Shuer, he is Grandpa's old friend. Just call him Grandpa Lin, Ling Qingtian introduced simply. Hello, Grandpa Lin, Leng Ruoxue greeted politely. Well, old man, no wonder you dote on this granddaughter so much. Unexpectedly, your granddaughter is such a rare genius. She's already a spiritual monarch at such a tender age. Lin Liang's sharp eyes sized up Leng Ruoxue with an intense gaze. Grandpa Lin, Shuer is flattered. I was only able to advance so smoothly because of a spiritual essence pill, Leng Ruoxue explained with the reason she had discussed with her grandfather beforehand. Spiritual essence pill? No wonder. With a spiritual essence pill, you can become a spiritual monarch even with poor aptitude. Old man, you're so biased. When Ruhan advanced, you were unwilling to give him a spiritual essence pill. Lin Liang shouted in discontent. Ruhan is a genius. Even without a spiritual essence pill, he still advanced smoothly. Furthermore, with you, his master, beside him, how could he have been in any danger? It's not like you don't know that using a spiritual essence pill to advance is the last resort. Which genius do you know that has used a spiritual essence pill? Leng Qingtian roared back, unwilling to be outdone. Those who reached spiritual monarch using a spiritual essence pill would cultivate much slower than those that reached spiritual monarch by themselves. Even so, spiritual essence pills were extremely rare and precious. Not only could spiritual essences pills help with advancement, but they could also reduce the risk. However, only great spiritualists could use them. Since ancient times, countless spiritualists had hit a wall and were unable to advance to spiritual monarch. The great spiritualist stage was a considerably important obstacle that spiritualists had to face. The status of a great spiritualist was only marginally more prestigious than ordinary people, but the moment you advanced to spiritual monarch, your status and standing would rise significantly. This was why spiritual essence pills were priceless and couldn't be found on the market. Anyway, you're too biased. Lin Liang hollered. Grandpa, since you have a guest, Shuer will visit you later, Leng Ruoxue said. At times like this, she should steer clear to prevent herself from becoming a target. After returning to Listening Snow Pavilion, Leng Ruoxue immediately called for Lu Tao and directly asked, Lu Tao, do I have an elder brother? Miss, did you recall young master? Lu Tao asked, a little unsure. Nope. I really have an elder brother. Why hasn't anyone raised him with me? Leng Ruoxue said with displeasure. 1. Chapter 13, I have an elder brother. 2. Miss, you were angry with young master and didn't allow anyone to mention him, Lu Tao explained. Leng Ruoxue closed her eyes and slowly searched through the memories of the silly Ruoxue. And, it turned out to have something to do with the seventh prince again. In addition to a grandfather who loved her, she also had a very protective elder brother who loved her. Because she was always bullied by the seventh prince, her brother sought revenge and beat him up. But somehow, the silly Ruoxue found out and refused to recognize this brother anymore. Shuer, Shuer. While Leng Ruoxue was looking through her memories, she heard her grandfather calling her. She immediately opened her eyes and saw him walking in. Grandpa, my big brother, Leng Ruoxue looked at her grandfather without blinking. Shuer, are you still mad at Ruhan? He has always been good to you, Leng Qingtian probed her tentatively since she asked. Although he loved both grandchildren, he adored Ruoxue more. Moreover, his granddaughter had lost part of her memory because of her injury, so he felt even more concern for her. Grandpa, Shuer used to be ignorant and couldn't appreciate big brother's painstaking care. But now I am clear-headed, so how could I be angry with him anymore? Leng Ruoxue was touched. Although foolish, the silly Ruoxue was really fortunate to have these loving family members. This was probably a blessing for someone unfortunate. After becoming this Ruoxue, she was also blessed and could finally feel the love that she had always desired, so she would definitely cherish it. Grandpa, Shuer can't remember many things. Please tell me about my big brother, Leng Ruoxue pleaded. Alright. Shuer, your brother ranks second on the genius rankings. He's the pride of our Leng family. Now, he's studying at the Heavenly Phoenix Academy, and he is the last disciple of the principal, who is that old fellow just you saw, Leng Qingtian explained. No wonder that old man doesn't like me. Leng Ruoxue could understand why. His genius disciple isn't as cared for at home as much as a simpleton girl. No wonder he's angry as a master. The genius rankings. Leng Ruoxue looked at her grandfather in puzzlement. It's the ranking for the top 50 genius youths who are 30 years old and below on the Ling Feng continent, Leng Qingtian explained. Oh. Leng Ruoxue didn't expect the rankings to be for the entire Ling Feng continent. My brother is the second on the entire continent. He must be a stunning and exceptional genius. Grandpa, who's first then? Leng Ruoxue was curious about who was even better than her brother. Hua Qing, the genius young master of the Hua family, the first of the 5 great families. Is his aptitude better than my brother's? Both of them have superior grade spiritual power affinity, but his spiritual power has one more attribute than Ruhan's. The genius rankings first compared spiritual power affinity and then spiritual power attributes. If both were the same, there would be a tie. Grandpa, I want to visit my brother tomorrow, Leng Ruoxue suddenly said. After hearing about him, she was very curious about this talented brother who loved his sister. Good. Shuer, there's actually something else, Leng Qingtian said hesitantly. What is it, Grandpa? Leng Ruoxue was puzzled. It was rare to see her grandfather hesitating. Leng Qingtian thought for a moment, and then he took out the imperial edict, handed it Shuer, and gestured for her to see for herself. Leng Ruoxue opened the edict in bewilderment. Yi Chen. Who is that? Leng Qingtian was relieved that his precious granddaughter didn't seem to be as angry as he thought she would. Yi Chen is from one of the 5 great families. He's the second son from a side branch of the Yi family. His mother is the 7th prince's aunt, noble Consort Fang's biological sister. But, he was born frail and sickly. After listening to her grandfather's explanation, Leng Ruoxue understood now. It's that 7th prince again. The emperor evidently has a scheme regarding grandfather. Why is the 7th prince like a lingering ghost always haunting me? Better not let me meet him, or else he will get it. Grandpa, just ignore the imperial edict. Getting married or not is up to me. Leng Ruoxue said somewhat arrogantly. She didn't have a good impression of the imperial family, so she didn't want to get involved with them, albeit Yi Chen was not that closely related. As long as she pretended to be intellectually disabled, she was sure the emperor couldn't do much to her. She was a simpleton after all. Although this was a world that respected the strong, before becoming a powerhouse above imperial power was still supreme. So she didn't want to cause trouble for her grandfather. Although her grandfather was at peak spiritual sovereign and the first person under spiritual supremacy, he was still not a spiritual supremacy level powerhouse. In this world, only by becoming a spiritual supremacy would you be qualified to stand on equal footing with imperial power. And only by becoming a spiritual deity could you truly stand above imperial power. This was her goal. Of course. I will fight with my life on the line against anyone who tries to force my precious granddaughter to do anything she doesn't like. Leng Qingtian said dotingly. He didn't really care about the imperial edict bestowing marriage. He was just worried that she would be angry. But seeing that Shuer didn't take it seriously at all, he was relieved. Shuer, this is for you. Leng Qingtian handed her a golden badge. Leng Ruoxue took the badge in confusion. On the front, there were only the two words, Heavenly Phoenix, while the back was blank. You are now a student of the Heavenly Phoenix Academy. This badge shows your identity. Don't lose it, or the Academy won't let you in. Ling Qingtian reminded her. Grandpa, don't you need to pass an entrance test to enter the Heavenly Phoenix Academy? Ling Ruoxue asked. From what she knew, the Heavenly Phoenix Academy was one of the 3 top academies on the Ling Feng continent, and the entrance test was very strict. Anyone who could enroll in it was a genius or at least an elite. Chapter 14, Sibling Reunion. It's alright. Grandpa has been friends with that old man for a long time. Besides, he is Ruhan's master. Shouldn't he give me this face? Moreover, he should feel honored that my darling granddaughter is willing to study at his academy, Ling Qingtian said proudly. Upon hearing her grandfather's narcissistic comment, Ling Ruoxue was at a loss for words. However, in order to keep her talent from being discovered, she really had to go through the back door. With this in consideration, she couldn't help being moved by her grandfather's carefulness. The next day, she greeted her grandfather before heading to the Heavenly Phoenix Academy with Lu Tao. The Heavenly Phoenix Academy was located in the northernmost region of Phoenix City, and because it was so remote, they rode a flying spirit beast called Falcon. Falcons were low-level spirit beasts resembling eagles. Although they were not very fast, they were docile and had undergone training. They were one of the more commonly used means of transportation on the Ling Feng continent. Due to being big, having soft and fluffy feathers, and providing a smooth flight, falcons were very popular with people. Lying on the falcon, Ling Ruoxue watched the scenery while listening to Lu Tao talk about her brother. Young master really dotes on Mississippi. He will definitely not let anyone who bullies miss off the hook, and suffering a beating is already considered a light penalty. He almost beat the 7th prince to death previously. During the few days when Miss was injured and unconscious, young master came to see Miss every day. As Ling Ruoxue listened to Lu Tao talk about her brother, she was green with envy of the silly Ruoxue. But since these relatives were hers now, she needed to take care of this familial affection that didn't come easily. Miss, we've arrived. The academy doesn't allow spirit beasts on the premises, so we have to go on foot, Lu Tao explained. Okay. The two of them dismounted and walked toward the entrance to the academy. When they reached the entrance, they were stopped by the gatekeeper. Ling Ruoxue simply flashed the badge and walked directly into the academy under the gatekeeper's surprised and dumbfounded gaze. Which family does that young lady come from? How does she have that badge? Could she be the Shui family's eldest young lady? No wonder she's so beautiful. Even a long time after regaining his composure, the gatekeeper was still murmuring to himself. Ling Ruoxue followed Lu Tao to her brother's residence, but he was still in class, and only his servant, Ming'an, was in the dormitory. Ling Ruoxue carefully looked around her brother's residence. The environment was quiet, simple, and refined, actually somewhat similar to her brother's character. Although her memories of her brother were a little hazy, she could still see her brother's refined makings. It was hard to imagine that a brother like this would actually beat someone to the verge of death. Schwer. A soft voice broke Ling Ruoxue's train of thought. Ling Ruoxue turned around to see an elegant and beautiful immortal-like man at the door. He's my brother. He's more outstanding than I remember. She had seen many handsome men, but it was the first time she had seen someone so clean, clear, and untainted like an immortal. His facial features were more exquisite and perfect than a woman's, enough to make any woman ashamed. She even felt that her brother's beauty was ineffable. While Ling Ruoxue was looking at her brother, Ling Ruhan was also looking at her. This is Schwer. Schwer after becoming clear-headed. She really resembles mother but is more beautiful than mother. Even though Ling Ruhan had already heard from his grandfather that his darling younger sister had already regained her mental facilities and was prepared to see her like this, seeing her with his own eyes excited him. Big brother, Ling Ruoxue anxiously called out. Spurred by his emotions, Ling Ruhan embraced Ling Ruoxue warmly. Schwer. His beloved sister was finally clear-headed, leaving him overjoyed. Personally, seeing his sister better now truly put him at ease. Shuer, you don't blame Big Brother anymore? Leng Ruhan asked uncertainly. Big Brother, Shuer was ignorant before and didn't know that you did everything for my own good. But now I understand, so how can I blame you? I should be apologizing instead for saddening you in the past. From now on, Shuer will definitely be a younger sister who makes you proud. Leng Ruoxue said earnestly. She said this to let her brother know that the ignorant Shuer was now the past and that she would be a whole new person from now on. You are my dearest sister, so how could I ever blame you? My greatest wish is for you to live happily forever. I'll never let anyone who dares to bully you get away with it. After Leng Ruhan said this, a hint of fierceness that was inconsistent with his makings crept up on his clear, elegant, and beautiful face. Shuer will also never let anyone bully Big Brother. Only I can bully you, Leng Ruoxue said mischievously while looking at her beautiful brother. Alas, with a man like this around, how can women live? Okay, Big Brother will only let Shuer bully me. Leng Ruhan's face was brimming with love. Shuer, this is for you. Leng Ruhan looked at the little beast sleeping soundly on his sister's shoulder, took out a white egg about the size of 2 adult palms from his storage ring, and gave it to Leng Ruoxue. This is the egg of a blazing flame lion, Leng Ruhan explained. Spirit beasts were also divided by aptitude. If the innate aptitude was good, then the odds of becoming a holy beast or even a divine beast were much higher. The blazing flame lion was born an advanced spirit beast, and as it matured, it would grow into a holy beast. So the blazing flame lion egg was extremely valuable. Big Brother, keep this for yourself. I don't need it now, Leng Ruoxue said, afraid that her brother would be unwilling to use it himself. He only wanted to give good things to her, so she chose to turn him down. Big Brother already has a spirit beast. This egg was a reward from the academy competition. I always intended to give it to Shuer, Leng Ruhan explained. How could he not know that Shuer thoughts? After explaining, he directly condensed a needle with spiritual power and pierced Leng Ruoxue's finger. Then a drop of blood fell onto the egg, which the egg absorbed rapidly. Following which, the eggshell cracked, and a wet fiery red little beast the size of a palm emerged. The little beast shook its wet fur, and when it was dry, it pounced into Leng Ruoxue's arms and began rubbing against her to show its affection. And then it proceeded to eat its eggshell. Chapter 15, Where Am I? The contract methods for spirit beasts were mainly 2 types, the equal contract and the master-slave contract. But these 2 contracts applied only to mature spirit beasts, and a beast trainer had to tame them before forming a contract. For spirit beast eggs, the process was not as troublesome. Just dripping a drop of blood on an egg was all it took to recognize a master. Furthermore, contracts established this way led to better tacit understanding between the spirit beast and the owner than ones formed with mature spirit beasts. Therefore, some top families would give their geniuses the eggs of high-level spirit beast for them to nurture from birth. But raising spirit beasts from infancy was very time-consuming and resource-intensive, whereas mature spirit beasts could be utilized directly. So many preferred to spend a lot of money to employ a beast trainer to tame a mature spirit beast rather than waiting for a high-level spirit beast cub to mature because it took too long. I'll call you, Blaze. Leng Ruoxue's long and slender fingers gently teased the little beast, which was still gnawing on his eggshell. Surprisingly, this little thing was already a level 8 spirit beast from birth. Senior Brother Leng, who is this woman? The siblings were chatting happily when a somewhat sharp voice suddenly interrupted them. Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes looked up with displeasure at the source of the voice, only to see a woman staring at her with a face full of envy. The scowl on the woman's face ruined her originally pretty looks. And the way she looked at her big brother was as though he was her property and she couldn't wait to swallow him all for herself. As she looked at Leng Ruoxue, her fiery red eyes were flashing with vicious hatred. Did I offend her somehow? Leng Ruoxue speechlessly turned her gaze to her too beautiful brother, this source of calamity. Jealous women were unreasonable, but blindly jealous women were dreadful. In particular, her jealous glare made it seem as though someone had murdered her entire family. Who let you enter? Leng Ruhan's voice was cold and indifferent. What's wrong with Mingyan? Didn't I tell him not to let anyone disturb me? Senior brother Leng, who is this woman? Fu Mingzhu questioned as if she didn't hear the indifference and displeasure in Leng Ruhan's voice. She was the most beloved eldest young lady of the Fu family and the #1 beauty in the Eastern Lagoon Empire. She had long believed that senior brother Leng would belong to her sooner or later. But now, a woman he was treating special appeared, and this woman was even more beautiful than her, making a fire of jealousy blaze in her heart. She hated the fact that there even existed women who were more beautiful than her, not to mention this one who came to snatch senior brother Leng away from her. Furthermore, she had always wanted that blazing flame lion egg, yet he actually gave it to this woman. As she looked at that cute little lion gnawing on the eggshell, the flames of jealousy in her heart burned even more violently. Get out! Leng Ruhan couldn't even bother with her. Senior brother Leng, we are about to become engaged. How can you treat me like this? Fu Mingzhu said with grief as tears began to well up in her eyes, making her look extremely pitiful, to the point where she was tugging at others' heartstrings. Looking at how this overbearing woman suddenly turned into a delicate woman who seemed to have suffered bullying in the blink of an eye, Leng Ruoxue couldn't help be wide-eyed. Her change was so fast. Why doesn't she go into acting? She's definitely at the level of an award-winning actress. She then looked at her brother with some sympathy. This woman isn't blackmailing him somehow, right? Otherwise, why would he become engaged to her? I didn't hear Grandpa mention this, or even Grandpa doesn't know. Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes darted about as she made all sorts of wild guesses. Get out! Leng Ruhan came to the end of his patience. If she weren't his good friend's sister, he would have thrown her out. Woo-woo, Fu Mingzhu sobbed bitterly as she ran away. She was going to find her big brother to complain. She would not let that woman go. Big brother, don't bother about her. She's just my good friend's sister, Leng Ruhan said casually. The siblings weren't really bothered by this sudden incident and continued chatting for a while. Seeing that it was getting late, Leng Ruoxue was afraid that grandfather would be worried, so she left the academy under the reluctant gaze of her brother. Before leaving, she gave her brother a bottle of crystal honey from her grandfather. Crystal honey had the effect of improving spiritual power, which he needed right now. Miss, you're back. As Leng Ruoxue entered Listening Snow Pavilion, Cui Zhu welcomed her back. Grandpa. Shuer is back. Ah. This little blazing flame lion, Leng Qingtian, who had been waiting for his granddaughter to return in Listening Snow Pavilion, looked at the little lion lying in Shuer's arms. This little fellow was actually already a level 8 spirit beast. His name is Blaze, a gift from Big Brother, Leng Ruoxue said helplessly. When Baby woke up and saw this little lion, he began to throw a temper tantrum at her. Grandpa also has something for you. Leng Qingtian took out a purple bracelet and handed it to her. Leng Ruoxue took the bracelet. The transparent bracelet looked a bit like a piece of glass like purple jade. How exquisite. Is it a piece of jewelry? Storage bracelets don't seem this beautiful. This is the Leng family's family heirloom. It's a storage bracelet. However, we've never had anyone in the family who could become its owner. Grandpa is giving it to you now, Leng Qingtian explained. Couldn't become its owner. After her grandpa left, Leng Ruoxue murmured while looking at the purple bracelet on her snow-white wrist. After thinking about it, Leng Ruoxue condensed spiritual energy into a needle and pierced a fingertip to drip a drop of blood onto the bracelet. Where am I? Baby? Big sister. Baby cried with his puerile voice. With Baby in her arms, Leng Ruoxue calmed down and began to observe the surrounding scenery. Overhead was a cloudless blue sky. The spiritual energy in the air was exceptionally rich. Not far away, there was a forest with trees full of fruits, and opposite the forest was a house made of purple bamboo. On the left side of the house were a few fields full of all kinds of flowers and plants, most of which she didn't know, and one field with nothing planted in it. Not far away from the fields was a small pond constructed of white jade. In the pond was a spring with water flowing out, but the spring water was milky white and exuded an exotic fragrance. Can this even be considered spring water? On the right side of the house were several larger ponds, similarly made of white jade, with all sorts of fish and crustaceans thriving within. About a kilometer behind the house was a waterfall with water continuously flowing into the pool below, in which were some white transparent fish swimming around leisurely. Surrounding these spectacular sights was a curtain of thick mist preventing her from seeing beyond. Where am I? Leng Ruoxue was puzzled and had a multitude of questions. 3. Chapter 16, The Space in the Bracelet. This is inside the Heaven and Earth bracelet, idiot. A childish voice sounded in Leng Ruoxue's ears. Who's talking? Leng Ruoxue looked around. Big sister, below. In Leng Ruoxue's arms, baby motioned her to look down with his small paw. She looked in the direction his paw was pointing and saw a chubby, pink, and tender toddler about a year old, wearing only a red belly band. Whose toddler is this? Leng Ruoxue couldn't help stretching out a finger and gently poking the too cute pink and tender face. Why, you are taking advantage of this young master. Woo woo woo. Pervert. The toddler's big, dark, and bright eyes were full of tears as he complained aggrievedly. Leng Ruoxue's face turned dark as she stared at this little boy. She merely poked this little thing on the face. How did she become a pervert? You, a little boy, is a young master. Leng Ruoxue was speechless. How could such a small boy be a young master? The toddler, who claimed to be a young master, looked at Leng Ruoxue with big teary eyes for a long time before finally saying, "You're bullying me." Woo, okay. Big sister was wrong. Don't cry. Leng Ruoxue coaxed helplessly. Fortunately, no one else was here. Otherwise, they might think that she was bullying this little kid. Why was she attracting small things that pretended to be pitiful and loved to cry recently? Can you tell big sister where we are now? Leng Ruoxue continued to coax. This place looked inhabited, but why was there only a child with no adults? I said it earlier. This is within the Heaven and Earth bracelet. The cute little toddler looked at Leng Ruoxue's eyes with a gaze that seemed to suggest that she was stupid. Heaven and Earth bracelet? Leng Ruoxue still had some doubts in her eyes. Okay, she admitted that this toddler could despise her, but she really didn't know what this Heaven and Earth bracelet was. Wait a minute. Heaven and Earth bracelet? Is it the bracelet I'm wearing? Leng Ruoxue's gaze shifted to the purple bracelet on her wrist. The little toddler nodded, his bright black eyes looking at Leng Ruoxue unblinkingly. You are now the owner of the Heaven and Earth bracelet, and we are currently in the space within the bracelet. This young master is the artifact spirit of the Heaven and Earth bracelet, the toddler explained simply with a gaze that said, you should understand now. Could this be the legendary, portable space? Leng Ruoxue was surprised. She did hear the secretaries of her company in her previous life saying that they wanted to have something like a portable space. This isn't some portable space. It's much more advanced than that. The Heaven and Earth bracelet is a divine artifact. Do you understand what a divine artifact is? How can it be compared to a simple portable space? The toddler was about to throw a tantrum when he heard her comparing him to a portable space that could only farm and raise small animals. Leng Ruoxue looked at the angry toddler in amusement. Divine artifact? Never heard of it. Leng Ruoxue said honestly. She had indeed never heard of it. She only knew that the best equipment in this world was at the sacred artifact grade. Divine artifact. Sounds pretty advanced. Why you are too ignorant, the toddler roared angrily, seemingly saying, this young master is angry now. The consequences are serious. Seeing that the little fellow was really getting angry, she stopped teasing him. Although she was not an artificer yet, she knew that equipment that had artifact spirits were definitely not at a low grade. Moreover, being able to refine equipment that possessed an artifact spirit was the lifelong dream of every artificer. However, Len Ruoxue really couldn't stand a little kid who kept claiming that he was a young master. It felt weird. A child is a child. If you continue calling yourself a young master, I'll spank you. Woo! You're threatening me. You're a bad master. I'm not some child. I'm so small because I'm sealed. The toddler bawled. He didn't want to be so small either. Woo! Sealed? Yes. If not for being sealed, I would be very powerful, the chubby toddler said with a face full of pride. Who sealed you? Len Ruoxue asked curiously. My former master. Why did he seal you? Because he was dying and afraid that I would fall into the wrong hands. He also said that my new master would help me unlock the seal. The toddler looked at Len Ruoxue expectantly. Me? Yes. How do I unlock your seal? You can't do it now. Master, you are still too weak, the toddler said honestly with some regret in his bright black eyes. Am I being despised by the artifact spirit again? Len Ruoxue felt very uncomfortable. Master, come with me. The toddler turned around. The little fellow brought her into that purple bamboo house, took out a jade slip from who knows where, and gave it to her. 2. What is this? Len Ruoxue looked at the jade slip in her hand suspiciously. This is my former master's cultivation technique. Master, you can only unlock my seal after you cultivate it. Master, your current cultivation level is simply too low, the toddler explained. Len Ruoxue looked at the jade slip but didn't know where to start. Master, use your divine sense, and you should be able to see it, the toddler said. Len Ruoxue released her divine sense. The moment she touched the jade slip, a majestic voice rang in her ears. Child, you are here. Len Ruoxue looked at the scenery that suddenly changed again in surprise. Where is this now? She looked around. This is definitely not in the purple bamboo house. As she pondered, a noble and handsome man in a black and gold robe appeared in front of her. Who are you? Len Ruoxue's beautiful eyes looked at the noble man in front of her. This man had a pair of dazzling and bright eyes, as though he could suck people into them. Chapter 17, A Cheap Master, Old Master, the toddler beside Len Ruoxue called out first before the noble man replied. Old Master? Didn't he die? Len Ruoxue glanced over at the toddler and then at the noble man in doubt. Child, I am indeed dead. What you see now is merely a wisp of my divine sense that I left behind before I died, the noble man explained. Child, am I that young? Len Ruoxue felt awkward. It felt strange being called a child by someone who didn't look much older than her. In my eyes, you are a child. The noble man saw her thoughts. Whatever, just call me a child then, Len Ruoxue thought. I shouldn't fuss over it with someone already dead. Uncle. Since he's calling me a child, I have to call him uncle to show my respect, Len Ruoxue retaliated in her head. I am you, but you should call me master. Yu was a bit exasperated. This little fellow really doesn't want to suffer any loss. 2. Master. But I don't intend to acknowledge you as my master. She sounded totally uninterested. All of what she was going through now was too bizarre. It felt as though she was being schemed against, and she hated this feeling. Moreover, her gut feeling was that this noble man in front of her was definitely big trouble. Don't you want to become a powerhouse? Don't you want to protect your loved ones? You didn't feel offended by Len Ruoxue's indifferent attitude. In fact, he felt some appreciation for her. Worthy of being the disciple I chose. She's still so calm. Someone else would have been so overjoyed that they would have already forgotten everything and wouldn't have been able to refuse after finding the magical bracelet and given a chance to be my disciple. I do, but I hate trouble, Len Ruoxue answered honestly. In this world where the strong were respected, only by becoming a powerhouse would she not be at the mercy of anyone and be in control of her destiny. However, she was rational. She knew that all good things came with a price, so she wasn't willing to put her future in the hands of a complete stranger. What a paranoid little fellow. Yu smiled. Of course, he could tell what Len Ruoxue was thinking. Paranoid? Perhaps. At least I won't believe that a complete stranger would be so good to me for no rhyme or reason. As the saying goes, what goes around comes around. Who knows what sort of traps may be waiting for me if I accept his benefits? After all, she was a shrewd businesswoman in her previous life, so she would find it hard to believe a stranger who didn't want anything in return. Moreover, after being reborn in this world and obtaining the familial love she had always wished for, she was more cautious and cherished her life even more. How could she risk it by willingly getting herself into trouble? Child, if you want to become strong to protect your loved ones, you must become my disciple. After all, you are now the owner of the heaven and earth bracelet, Yu said. What do you mean? Len Ruoxue looked at Yu in confusion. What does owning the heaven and earth bracelet have anything to do with becoming his disciple? I'm sure you know what the saying, a man's wealth is his own ruin by causing another's greed means. The heaven and earth bracelet is no ordinary divine artifact. How can the person who wants to obtain the heaven and earth bracelet spare you? If you're not strong enough, how can you protect yourself and your loved ones? I can tell you clearly that your enemy is formidable, far beyond your imagination. Even if you become a spiritual deity, you're not on par, Yu explained. All because of this bracelet? Len Ruoxue was hesitant. What kind of lousy bracelet is this? Why does becoming its owner attract a powerful enemy? If I knew it would cause so much trouble, I would have thrown it away. She really hated her curiosity now. I'm not a lousy bracelet. Due to becoming the owner, Len Ruoxue couldn't hide her thoughts from the toddler. After saying this, he looked at his owner pitifully with tears welling up in his black eyes. He knew that his owner was shunning him. Woo woo. Len Ruoxue stared at him speechlessly. Why does this artifact spirit cry so much? Well, you can say that everything is fate, Yu said meaningfully as he looked at the little black beast lying on Len Ruoxue's shoulder. Of course, Len Ruoxue understood the principle of, a man's wealth is his own ruin by causing another's greed. But isn't there a better way? She wasn't ambitious at all. She wanted to be a powerhouse, but that was just because she hoped to safeguard her loving family better. But according to what you said, even if she became a spiritual deity, she wouldn't be strong enough to face that powerful enemy. Child, the conditions for the heaven and earth bracelet to recognize its owner are very stringent. You must possess a body of chaos, which is what you call having spiritual power of all the attributes. Furthermore, the bracelet can't be taken off after it recognizes an owner until the owner dies. And this death means even your soul will vanish. Do you know what that entails? You won't even have the chance to be reborn, Yu continued explaining. His words thoroughly dispelled Len Ruoxue's thoughts of wanting to get rid of the bracelet. 3. Unable to be taken off. So I can only accept this hot potato. Even if I don't want it, I have no choice but to accept it. Fine then. After all, she was already the owner of the bracelet. She had never been someone who ran away from her problems. Although she hated trouble, it did not mean that she feared trouble. Since she would be facing a powerful enemy, she had no choice but to become even stronger. She would absolutely never be at the mercy of others. Fine, I will be your disciple. But before that, I have a question. Len Ruoxue said after deliberation. I know what you're thinking. I can tell you that my heaven-defying art is a top-tier technique. As for that enemy, you will understand in due time, Yu said lightly. Although Len Ruoxue hadn't officially become his disciple yet, he already considered himself her master. Seeing that he didn't want to say more, she didn't pry any further. Without any reluctance, she respectfully kowtowed to him 3 times and formally acknowledged him as her master. Chapter 18, A Cheap Master, 2, Alright, good disciple, get up quickly, you said happily as he helped Len Ruoxue up. Disciple, I will teach you the heaven-defying art. You sent the heaven-defying art into Len Ruoxue's sea of knowledge. The moment the white light entered her mind, Len Ruoxue instantly felt that there was something additional in her mind. The heaven-defying art is a top-tier technique, and it is divided into 9 levels. The first 3 levels are basic techniques. The first level is mainly for body remolding and foundation building. Cultivating to the 3rd level is equivalent to being a spiritual deity of your world. However, this world is the lowest level space, and there are higher level spaces in the universe everywhere, so you have to keep your vision long-term. Disciple, you are destined to become a powerhouse with your talents. This Lingfeng continent is too small, and your stage isn't here. Len Ruoxue was about to rejoice when she heard her master say that reaching the 3rd level was equivalent to a spiritual deity. But before she could be happy, she was warned immediately. She knew that her master deliberately reminded her because he was afraid that she would not want to make progress and would be satisfied with the status quo. She is promising and teachable. You looked at Len Ruoxue with satisfaction before continuing. In addition to the cultivation technique, the heaven-defying art also contains an artificer chapter, an alchemy chapter, and a beast training chapter. However, Master doesn't have time to teach you everything, so you will have to learn on your own in the future, you said with slight sadness. Master, disciple, come, take this remolding pill. Master will help you with the first level of the heaven-defying art. You handed her a milky white pill. Len Ruoxue reached out to take the pill, and its peculiar fragrance drifted to the tip of her nose. It's so fragrant. Len Ruoxue knew that the pill should not be exposed to the air for too long. Otherwise, the efficacy of the pill would reduce. So she hurriedly took the fragrant pill into her mouth and sat cross-legged. Disciple, circulate the heaven-defying art, you reminded, and then poured his own spiritual power into Len Ruoxue's body to help her remold her body and build her foundation. Cultivating the heaven-defying art required an immense amount of spiritual power. Len Ruoxue's current spiritual power was absolutely not enough. After a long while, you stopped inputting his spiritual power and then set up a barrier to protect her. Old Master, why isn't Master awake yet? The heaven-defying art is different from other techniques. The higher the talent, the longer the cultivation time for the first level. You watched the 2 little guys stare at his disciple and could not help but smile. Big sister. Master. As soon as Len Ruoxue opened her eyes, she saw 2 little things running toward her. However, they didn't rush into her arms but ran directly into the barrier set up by her master. One, big sister, woo, baby threw himself into Len Ruoxue's arms and cried aggrievedly after you removed the barrier. Baby missed big sister so much. Silly thing, wasn't big sister always here? Len Ruoxue said helplessly. This little guy was too clingy to her. Since baby occupied her arms, the toddler could only look at her pitifully. Master. Pretty good. Disciple, go wash up first, you said with satisfaction as he looked at Len Ruoxue's cultivation progress. Len Ruoxue lowered her head and looked at herself, only to find a lot of thick grayish-black liquid on her body, which should be her body impurities discharged after the remolding. Master, I'll bring you there, the toddler said thoughtfully. Master. Len Ruoxue returned to you after washing up. Disciple, I will teach you alchemy and artificing next. But time is running for me, so you have to work harder. You raised his hand gently and changed the environment. This place is, Len Ruoxue looked around. This place was very spacious. There is a palm-sized alchemy furnace in the center of the hall and nothing else. This is the place Master used to use for alchemy and artificing. It belongs to you now. Yu then gave Leng Ruoxue a detailed explanation of alchemy and artificing. Leng Ruoxue listened carefully and immediately asked for clarification on issues she didn't understand. Disciple, Master has said all that I can. You'll have to comprehend the rest yourself, Yu said with relief. What he just said was enough for some talented alchemists and artificers to learn for hundreds of years. He did not know much his disciple could comprehend. One Leng Ruoxue was immersed in learning alchemy and artificing as though she had obtained a treasure. After mastering the basic knowledge of alchemy and artificing, she decided to concoct pills first, especially the remolding pill. Although the remolding pill was merely an elementary pill, it was very important. Elementary pills had differences in quality, and high-quality elementary pills were comparable to intermediate pills. The quality and success rate of pills completely depended on the level of the alchemist, the proficiency of the technique, the level of the flame, and the degree of control over the flame. Leng Ruoxue put the medicinal herbs into the alchemy furnace in order. First time, failed. Second time, failed. After several failures in succession, she finally concocted the remolding pill. Even though there were only 5 pills, she was still very happy. After all, this was the first time she successfully concocted pills. Alas, it seemed like alchemy and artificing were not things that poor people could afford to learn. She felt a little distressed thinking about the medicinal herbs she had wasted. However, she also knew that this was a process that successful alchemists and artificers had to go through. As the saying went, failure is the mother of success. How could there be success without first experiencing failure? She continued to concoct several other elementary pills. As her concocting technique and proficiency in flame control improved, the quality and success rate of her pills greatly improved. When the practice for the alchemy came to an end, and she was ready to start artificing. Leng Ruoxue looked at the materials in her hand and hesitated. But she continued to put the materials into the furnace one by one. She was now very proficient in her flame control, so she was confident that she could refine her first piece of equipment. She watched as the materials in the furnace melted bit by bit. With the removal of impurities and purification, the liquid about the size of a blue ball gradually became only the size of a baby's fist. What she wanted to refine was a piece of defensive equipment. After portraying the shape in her mind, she slowly controlled the liquid to shape it and finally tempered it with the shape. 1. Chapter 19, Cultivating the Heaven-Defying Art Success. Leng Ruoxue was beside herself with joy while looking at the small azure earrings in her palm, even though the grade of this piece of equipment wasn't high, only at the treasured artifact grade. Not bad. You managed to refine an advanced treasured artifact on your first try. You appeared from nowhere next to Leng Ruoxue. He then looked at the pills that his disciple had concocted. Although there were only elementary pills, their quality had reached the intermediate grade. Her talents even made him, her master, a little jealous. Disciple, Master's experiences on alchemy and artificing over the many years are recorded here. Yi handed Leng Ruoxue a jade slip. Master, disciple, you have already cultivated to the second level of the heaven-defying art. Your cultivation level now is akin to peak spiritual monarch. However, you will not be able to advance in Master's space. After going out, you can find a place to advance, and then heaven and earth laws will descend. Heaven and earth laws are a gift from heaven and shouldn't be wasted. Okay. Leng Ruoxue nodded slightly as she quietly listened to her master's instructions. Disciple, this heaven and earth bracelet is a very powerful divine artifact with many functions, but I have sealed it. You will understand it when you slowly unlock the seal in the future. Now, the level of the heaven and earth bracelet is equivalent to a treasured artifact of this world. There are only the 3 basic functions, planting space, time acceleration, and hiding your level, but they are enough for you currently. Disciple, Master accepted 2 disciples before you. They are your senior brothers. However, I passed away and don't know what has happened to them. If you have the chance to meet them in the future, they will be a good help to you. Master also had very loyal subordinates, but I don't know how they're doing now, you said with a helpless longing. Master, what do my two senior brothers look like? Leng Ruoxue asked. She could hear the nostalgia in her master's voice. As long as she had the opportunity, she would be happy to help her master find her two senior brothers. My good disciple, you are too weak now. I have sealed the things that happened back in the heaven-defying art. You'll naturally understand when your cultivation reaches Master's requirement, you said resolutely. Master, you are not willing to tell me who the enemy is, but what should I do if the enemy finds me? I won't know until the enemy comes to my door. Wouldn't that put me in a very dangerous situation? Leng Ruoxue said somewhat intensely. She wanted to know who her senior brothers were to ask who the enemy was in passing. However, her intentions were blocked by her master's words before she could even ask him. Silly child, how could a master put their disciple in danger? Master has plans, you said mysteriously, but he refused to reveal another word. Disciple, let's go. The two little fellows are waiting anxiously, you reminded. Big sister. Master. Seeing Leng Ruoxue come out, Baby immediately rushed into her arms and refused to leave. Woo woo woo. Big sister, this person is so bad. He bullied Baby, Baby complained. Leng Ruoxue looked at her master in puzzlement, her beautiful little face full of question marks. Master gave this little fellow some special training, you explained. Baby seems a little different. Leng Ruoxue coaxed, even though she didn't know what her master's so-called special training was. Baby must protect big sister, Baby said shyly. Disciple, master is leaving, you said reluctantly. He did not want to say it, but he knew his time was up. Master, tears blurred Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes uncontrollably. She knew that her master was really going to leave her. Would master not need to leave so soon if he hadn't given me his spiritual power? She couldn't help thinking in her mind. Silly child, don't let your imagination run wild. All things come to an end, you said a little sadly. Master, Leng Ruoxue knew very well that her master was currently merely a wisp of divine sense and would leave her sooner or later. Even though she was unwilling to accept him as her master at first, after getting along for so long and having her cheap master do his best to impart knowledge to her, she had already regarded him as family. She couldn't help but feel sad now that her master said that he was leaving her. Old master, bad guy, seeing the body transformed by Yes spiritual power disappear in front of them little by little, the three of them felt very uncomfortable. The atmosphere became depressed and gloomy, and no one spoke for a long time. Let's go out. Leng Ruoxue said after some time. Master, even though you've stayed here for almost 5 years, only 5 hours have passed outside, the chubby little toddler explained thoughtfully, knowing that his master was afraid her family would worry. Leng Ruoxue nodded and looked at the little toddler. Do you have a name? After coming in for so long, she had only focused on cultivating and still didn't know his name. I don't have a name yet. I was just able to manifest my body before being sealed, the toddler said. I'll name you Qing Ju then. Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. Thank you for giving me a name, master, Qing Ju, the toddler said happily. Call me big sister like baby. Leng Ruoxue said. She would feel guilty if a toddler called her master, as if she was engaging in exploiting child labor. Big sister. Baby looked at Leng Ruoxue with some annoyance. Someone came to snatch his big sister away. Leng Ruoxue calmly caressed Baby's soft fluff. Why is this little guy so possessive? She then left the bracelet with Baby in her arms. After returning to her room, Leng Ruoxue saw the little flame lion, who was sleeping on her bed, looking for something with those big fiery red watery eyes. After he saw her, his eyes released a ray of dependence, and he wanted to get close to her but dared not. Leng Ruoxue looked at the little guy's pitiful appearance and couldn't help but laugh. This little thing was scared because Baby was in her arms. Chapter 20, Leaving home. Leng Ruoxue put baby down and picked up the palm-sized flame lion. She caressed him before re-entering the bracelet and handing him over to Qing Ju. She then returned to her room. 1. Grandpa, I plan to leave home for some time to gain experience, Leng Ruoxue said to her grandfather the next day. Her knowledge of this world was currently limited to only what she had read. In fact, she had no idea what this world was really like, and this was very disadvantageous for her cultivation. Shuer, aren't you going to the academy to study? Leng Qingtian was puzzled. Although it would be beneficial for his granddaughter to go out and experience the world, he couldn't bear to part with her. Not for now. Let's talk about it later. She wanted to study at the academy before but not anymore. Nevertheless, if she had time in the future, she wanted to visit the library of the Heavenly Phoenix Academy. After all, it boasted having the most number of books on the Ling Feng continent. Leng Ruoxue knew that if she couldn't reassure her grandfather, he would definitely worry about her leaving home alone. She didn't want to have a bunch of people following her to protect her when she traveled. The thought of it scared her. So she decided to tell her grandfather about the bracelet after much deliberation yesterday. Where is this? Leng Qingtian looked around in surprise. Grandpa, this is the space inside the bracelet I told you about, Leng Ruoxue explained. The spiritual energy here is so dense, Leng Qingtian was at a loss for words. What Shuer had just told him was out of this world. If he hadn't seen this place with his own eyes, he would have never believed it. Shuer is really blessed. Shuer, don't let anyone else know about this place, Leng Qingtian warned her. After recovering from his initial shock, he immediately realized that if anyone knew about this place, his precious granddaughter would be in danger. Yes. If you weren't my dearest grandpa, I wouldn't have told you, Leng Ruoxue said playfully. Grandpa, this is the heavenly essence pill my master concocted to help you break through to spiritual supremacy. And it won't affect your future cultivation progress. She passed him a jade vial. Unexpectedly, there's a pill that can help break through to spiritual supremacy. Leng Qingtian couldn't help but be excited. He had been stuck at peak spiritual sovereign for many years and had been unable to break through. Now he finally had a chance. And this is for Big Brother. Leng Ruoxue handed her grandfather an emerald green fruit. After settling everything, Leng Ruoxue left Phoenix City with Baby and Blaze. 6. The illusionary forest was the largest forest on the Ling Feng continent, and it had countless spirit beasts and all sorts of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. But at the same time, it was extremely dangerous. However, as the saying went, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Most mercenary teams would choose the illusionary forest as their hunting ground. Moreover, many top families and academies favored it as the training ground for their descendants and students. Leng Ruoxue was sitting on the falcon, with Baby on her lap, as they flew toward the illusionary forest. For her first stop, she chose this forest that was full of opportunities and perils. She rolled open her map. The illusionary forest was within the borders of the Eastern Lagoon Empire, and the entrance was near Willow City, a medium-sized city in the east of the empire. Willow City was thousands of kilometers away from Phoenix City. At the speed her falcon was flying at, it would take about half a month to get there. This really dampened her spirits, but she didn't have a flying spirit beast of her own, and falcons were the most commonly used flying spirit beasts. Furthermore, you didn't even need a contract to use a falcon, so it was her best option. Nevertheless, she decided that she had to find a good flying spirit beast to contract with in the illusionary forest. At dusk, Leng Ruoxue got the falcon to land in Gain City. It was a very small city, and there were few pedestrians on the streets at night. She picked a random inn and booked a room to spend the night. The main reason was actually to let the falcon rest. As a low-level spirit beast, a day of flight had already depleted its stamina. Moreover, falcons had poor eyesight at night and couldn't navigate in the darkness. Upon entering the room, Leng Ruoxue immediately entered the Heaven and Earth bracelet. Seeing the falcon, which she had stored in the bracelet earlier, lying there quietly, she threw a pill to it. Because the ingredients were common, she had concocted this pill during her alchemy practice. Besides, the pill had no practical value, so she fed the falcon with it. After consuming the pill, the falcon gently rubbed its head against her hand to show its affection. Leng Ruoxue looked at the falcon and patted its head. Who said that low-level spirit beasts had no intelligence? If you treat them well, they know how to reciprocate, unlike some ungrateful humans. After comforting the falcon, she entered the purple bamboo house with baby in her arms. Blaze and Qing Ju were waiting for her here. Seeing her, they jumped into her arms and even squeezed baby aside. Noticing tears welling up in baby's aggrieved eyes, she couldn't help finding it amusing. With Qing Ju's support, Blaze was no longer as afraid of baby as before. You three, don't be naughty. Big sister is going to cultivate, Leng Ruoxue said. After a night of cultivation, Leng Ruoxue exited the bracelet, checked out of her room, and went to the mercenary union, where she registered as a mercenary with martial artist as her profession. 3 martial artist was the lowest among the 4 major professions. Those who chose to become martial artists were mostly those who couldn't awaken their spiritual power and become spiritualists but still wanted to change their lives and status. Therefore, martial artists were generally commoners. Usually, martial artists would register at the mercenary union, and being a mercenary was their main source of income. Martial artists had 6 stages. Only martial artists at the martial sovereign stage and above had the status to receive good treatment. Leng Ruoxue chose to become a martial artist to avoid unnecessary attention. The mercenary union in Gain City was tiny and didn't have many people, so registering was smooth. Afterward, she hopped onto the falcon and left Gain City. Chapter 21, The Illusionary Forest. Grandpa, Shuer went off training on her own. As soon as he returned home, Leng Ruhan hurried to his grandfather's study upon hearing that Shuer had left home to train. Yes. Leng Qingtian answered. Grandpa, Shuer has never left home since she was a child. How could you let her go alone? Leng Ruhan said worriedly. Ruhan, Shuer has already grown up. Since she wants to go, shouldn't I support her as her grandfather? Leng Qingtian said helplessly. No wonder Shuer didn't want Ruhan to know. If he knew, he would have definitely followed. But, Ruhan, Shuer can take care of herself, Leng Qingtian said firmly. To be honest, if he didn't know that she had that magical bracelet where she could seek refuge when in danger, he would also be quite worried. Shuer, how can you be so cruel? I love you so much, but you didn't even tell me before you left. Leng Ruhan complained in his head. Anyways, it's good that you're back, Ruhan. I will be going into seclusion a few days later. Oh, right, Shuer left this for you. Leng Qingtian took out the emerald green fruit and gave it to Ruhan. What rich spiritual energy! Where did Shuer get this? Why didn't she eat it herself? Leng Ruhan was both surprised and touched as he received the fruit. Shuer's master gave it to her, and she still has more. She specially left one for you, Leng Qingtian explained. Shuer's master? When did she have a master? Leng Ruhan was puzzled. She acknowledged a master just before leaving. Her master is very powerful, or else I wouldn't have dared to let her go out alone. So you don't have to worry about her. Leng Qingtian knew that his grandson loved Shuer even more than him, so he said this to reassure his grandson since he didn't want him to worry and have it affect his cultivation. Ruhan, tell the academy that you're going to join me in seclusion. Before Shuer left, she said that she hopes to see you becoming a spiritual sovereign when she returns, Leng Qingtian suggested. His grandson was already at peak spiritual monarch. With the fruit, it would be a piece of cake for him to break through to spiritual sovereign. Alright. Since this is what Shuer wants, how can I let her down? Leng Ruoxue had been flying for nearly half a month on the falcon, and she was finally nearing the illusionary forest. In the past half month, she had been flying during the day and resting at inns during the night. Although she always booked rooms, she rested and cultivated in the heaven and earth bracelet. 2-3 days ago, she found an uninhabited valley to advance. After the baptism of heaven and earth laws, she was able to reach intermediate spiritual sovereign and unlock the first seal of the heaven and earth bracelet. The heaven and earth bracelet gained the ability to change into any shape at will, and the small flame lion advanced to level 9 spirit beast. Even the falcon she fed with pills every day had promoted to intermediate spirit beast. But baby still had no changes and was as weak as before. Finally here. Len Ruoxue was excited when she saw the giant trees that shielded the forest floor from the sun and the green that stretched infinitely into the horizon. As soon as she entered Willow City, she saw the immense forest. Although Willow City was only a medium-sized city in the Eastern Lagoon Empire, because of the illusionary forest, it was as bustling and prosperous as any major city of the empire. But the prosperous city was not that attractive to her at this moment. She most wanted to enter the long-awaited illusionary forest currently. Now that she was here, how could she be willing to wait? After all, she was not here to sightsee. Len Ruoxue came to the entrance of the forest. The sun had set, so no one was around the area. To be precise, no one would choose to enter the forest at night because the illusionary forest would become even more perilous. But for Len Ruoxue, it made no difference. She had the heaven and earth bracelet, so she could get out of any dangerous situations. It wasn't free to enter the illusionary forest, there was an entrance fee of 500 gold coins per person. Len Ruoxue paid the money and was about to enter when the guards suddenly stopped her. "Miss, please wait." Len Ruoxue frowned. "What does he want? Why isn't he letting me in after I've paid?" "Miss, the illusionary forest is extremely dangerous at night. You should come back during the day," the young guard kindly reminded her. He didn't want such a beautiful young lady to be eaten by the spirit beasts in the forest. "It's okay. I'm not afraid." Len Ruoxue thanked the guard and headed in. Although she knew that the illusionary forest was enormous, only when she was here, walking among the trees, could she truly feel the boundlessness. She spent almost a month in the forest, but it wasn't very fruitful. She had only seen a few high-level spirit beasts. Moreover, it seemed as though she was still in the periphery of the forest. During this time, she encountered a small mercenary team of 5, from whom she inquired some information. At first, she was still surprised because she had read that there were many mercenary groups in the forest. But after almost a month, she had only met this team. They told her that it wasn't strange for her not to come across anyone in the forest because it was simply too big. Many weaker mercenary groups did not dare to proceed too deep into the forest and wouldn't spend the night here. Afterward, Len Ruoxue declined their invitation to join their group and parted ways with them. Len Ruoxue continued farther into the forest. She collected all the herbs she came across along the way, and she also hunted many delicious spirit beasts for food. She had already filled up several storage rings. Alas, she had too many gluttonous little spirit beasts to feed. And, well, she also liked to eat. Although some beasts were really cute, she clearly distinguished between food and pets. There seems to be fighting. Her journey so far had been rather boring. She had only encountered that small mercenary team, and all the spirit beasts she encountered were weak and didn't take much effort to deal with. Now, with the sudden sounds of intense fighting, her curiosity was piqued. Thus, she walked toward the source of the commotion. Chapter 22, Purple-Eyed Snow Fox. Those are, Purple-Eyed Snow Fox and Earth Lizard. Len Ruoxue was slightly surprised. Purple-Eyed Snow Foxes, the king of foxes, were born elegant and noble. They were formidable spirit beasts that were best at charming and used ice element attacks. Earth Lizards slightly resembled a lizard. They were said to have the blood of dragons and were a side branch of the dragon race. Earth Lizards were of earth attribute spirit beasts and were best at defense. Although she didn't know why the purple-eyed snow fox and earth lizard were fighting, she could sense that they were higher level than her, so she kept her distance to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Spirit beasts could be divided into elementary, intermediate, advanced, holy, and divine beasts. Levels 1 to 3 were elementary, 4 to 6 were intermediate, and 7 to 9 were advanced. Holy beasts and divine beasts each had 9 levels as well. Only when spirit beasts reached level 7 could they speak, and only divine beasts could transform into human form. 3 Since Leng Ruoxue entered the bracelet to cultivate every night, she had already reached advanced spiritual sovereign with time acceleration. However, she still felt that these 2 spirit beasts were stronger than her. This meant that they were at least level 7 holy beasts. Levels 1 to 5 holy beasts were equivalent to human spiritual sovereigns, and levels 7 and above holy beasts were equivalent to human spiritual supremacies. It was a rare opportunity to see a battle between 2 spiritual supremacy level spirit beasts, so how should she let this chance slip away? With this thought, Leng Ruoxue hurriedly hid behind bushes to spectate the fight. Although the opportunity was rare, her safety was still more important. Big sister, those 2 are level 9 holy beasts, Qing Ju said from the Heaven and Earth bracelet. Level 9? Who do you think will win? Leng Ruoxue communicated telepathically with Qing Ju. Although most of his abilities were sealed, he had traversed through many cosmic spaces with his master, so he was considerably experienced and knowledgeable. These 2 beasts aren't weak, and each has its own strengths. It's hard to tell, but judging by the current situation, the fox is likely to win, Qing Ju analyzed. Damn fox, if I can't have it, you can't either. Seeing that it was at a disadvantage, the earth lizard's milky little eyes flashed with viciousness. Stinky reptile, you can't even defeat me, the purple-eyed snow fox said elegantly. Although it looked disheveled now, its nobleness remained unaffected. Big sister, that earth lizard is going to blow itself up. Come in quickly. Qing Ju sensed the spiritual energy in the forest rushing toward the earth lizard and hurriedly reminded Leng Ruoxue to take refuge in the bracelet. A level 9 holy beast self-exploding couldn't be taken lightly. Just as Leng Ruoxue was about to enter the bracelet, she saw the purple-eyed snow fox unleashing a spiritual skill, so she waited to see what it would do to prevent the earth lizard from exploding. Damn it! You lunatic! The purple-eyed snow fox could tell what the earth lizard was up to, so it unleashed its most powerful ice element spiritual skill and froze the huge earth lizard into a block of ice. Then it collapsed onto the ground due to exhausting its spiritual power. Human, come out, the purple-eyed snow fox uttered weakly. In fact, it had long known that there was a human nearby, but the human was too weak for it to take seriously. But now that both it and the stinky reptile were heavily injured, the puny human would be able to take advantage of them. Since the snow fox was aware of her presence, Leng Ruoxue stopped hiding and walked out from behind the bushes without hesitation. Upon seeing the little human, the purple-eyed snow fox was stunned. It's actually a woman, and she looks decent too. The best-looking human I've seen. I would rather die than acknowledge a weak human as my master. Despite being in a tattered state, the purple-eyed snow fox was still arrogant. The proud spirit beast would never acknowledge a weak human as its master, even if she looked decent. Weak? Is it referring to me? Leng Ruoxue was a bit depressed. Although her cultivation wasn't high, she wasn't weak either. She wasn't even hiding her strength currently. But if she knew that the beast only saw her as looking decent, she would be even more depressed. Leng Ruoxue examined the snow fox before her. Blood and dirt covered its white fur, and it had injuries all over its body. Although it was riddled with wounds, it still maintained its natural elegance. She had heard that purple-eyed snow foxes were spirit beasts with a noble bloodline. The nobler the bloodline, the scarcer the spirit beast. So this snow fox could definitely be regarded as a legendary spirit beast, rare and precious. Everyone liked beautiful things, and she was no exception. But even though she liked this snow fox a lot, she didn't want to force the fox when it was in a difficult situation. Len Ruoxua approached the snow fox, who was lying motionless on the ground from overdrawing its spiritual power and severe injuries, and stuffed a pill into its mouth. I don't intend to tame you forcibly. She was also very proud. Then she turned and left. Dumbfounded, the snow fox watched as the weak human departed. What's going on? Isn't this human supposed to capture me while I'm weak and find a beast trainer to tame me? Why is she leaving? This isn't right. The smart snow fox was confused. What? My injuries have healed, and even my spiritual power has restored? Let me try. I'm really okay. That pill. Seeing the human walk farther and farther away, the snow fox hurriedly got up and chased after her. Len Ruoxua looked at the large 2-meter-tall snow fox blocking her way in bewilderment. Why didn't you capture me and find a beast trainer to tame me? The snow fox asked doubtfully. Its beautiful, amethyst-like watery eyes reflected a glimpse of shyness. Do you think that all humans will capitalize on your injuries to capture you, then find a beast trainer to tame and contract you? Len Ruoxua threw a question back instead. Yes. The snow fox nodded its head earnestly. Aren't humans like that? Not every human likes to take advantage of others' difficulties, Len Ruoxua said. In her previous life, she had always seen animals as man's best friend, or at least more trustworthy than some humans. Moreover, her grandfather once told her that humans and spirit beasts should be best friends, and both her grandfather and big brother treated their spirit beasts as family members. The Len family would never treat their spirit beasts as mere tools. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.